Good evening and welcome to the Wednesday, March 20th, 2013 meeting, first day of spring of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. First item on the agenda is to vote minutes of February 13th, and I've read those minutes. I guess Gordon, Ed, and Tom can't comment.
Correct.
Which means we don't have a quorum to vote. So we'll wait till next week on those minutes. Okay, now we have the minutes of 2/27. Did anybody read them?
And do you have a quorum for that one?
Courtney, Michelle, Mike, Tommy. Just you and me aren't on it. So among those four of you who I just mentioned, does anybody want to?
I haven't seen
Nobody's
the
read
minutes
them.
at all.
All right, well, we'll have them both next week. Okay, request for determination of applicability. Judith,
Madam Chair, can we ask that those be,
Yeah,
copies of those be put in our packets? Because I don't have them anywhere.
No, it's okay.
yes, you may, and yes,
Thank
they
you.
will be put there. Request for determination of applicability. Judith Ellis, 42 Nemasket Road, West Falmouth, for permission to rebuild the existing deck in the same footprint on new sonotubes, all work by hand. Jen?
Yes, Madam Chairman, the staff is recommending a -2 under the state and the bylaw with the resource area boundaries not confirmed.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions on the board?
I'm Henry Ellis from Massachusetts.
Okay, let me explain something.
I didn't understand what she said.
I know, so I was gonna say, after we voted, so just so you'll understand, she made a negative determination. A negative determination means you can go ahead and do what you applied to do.
This is a case where no
Right.
means yes. Not very often, but in this case it does.
You can bring it down to the office tomorrow once you get a copy of the determination from our office. You attach it to the building department, the building application, and submit it downstairs. Okay?
To the total,
There's a drop box right outside of the Concom office. You put it right in the front, the top drawer, and it
do
will
I
go
leave
through
a
the
check with
process.
that too, or what
No,
do I
do
get?
not leave a check.
Do not leave a check.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
not a
Okay,
problem,
so
sir.
you're
Good
set?
luck with your project.
You understand what you need to do, and you understand that you can do what you applied to do? All
We
right,
haven't voted yet, though.
well, actually, we haven't voted. Okay, are there any other questions from the audience? Okay, motion on the table is to accept staff's recommendation of a negative determination, which means Mr. Ellis can go ahead and rebuild his deck with the new sonotubes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Now you officially can do it, once you get the paperwork from Jen tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. Town of Falmouth Engineering Department, care of Scott Schluter, Wild Harbor Road from Old Main Road to Arlington Street, North Falmouth, for permission to reconstruct the paved roadway surface and sidewalks within the same footprint and improvements to the stormwater system that includes cleaning 1,127 linear feet of pipe, replacing 353 linear feet of pipe, and replacement of one collapsed manhole structure. Jen?
Yes, Madam Chairman, the town engineering department has done a tremendous amount of work to look at the stormwater. You
System
know,
there.
Wild Harbor Road, it is a very, very difficult site. This was the best they could do because the wetlands, there were just wetlands
On both sides, right.
of the road, particularly in the low areas where they need to deal with the stormwater. They looked at other options about placing stormwater structures. I'd say the fire department, the septic system was in the way, so they've looked at it for the past couple of months, and this is the application before you. We've talked with them. We met with Scott Schluter today regarding the work methodology and supervision on the site when the work is going forward, and at this point we are recommending a -2 under the state and the bylaw with the resource area boundaries not confirmed.
So move.
Second.
Okay, any questions on the board? Any questions from the audience? Okay, motion on the table is to accept staff's recommendation of a negative determination. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Request for a hearing under a notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are heard simultaneously under the authority of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. First one we have is FX Casino LLC, 286 Grand Avenue, Falmouth, for permission to conduct beach management and maintenance on the coastal beach that includes raking, screening, cleaning, grading, beach nourishment, and the associated grading and landscaping. Jen? Thanks,
Yes,
Mike.
Madam Chairman, I will save any of my comments until after Mr. Barcelli's presentation.
Good evening, Mike.
Madam Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Michael Borselli from Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant. We're here tonight asking permission to do some management and general maintenance of the beach in front of the casino facility. This property is directly adjacent to the Falmouth Heights Beach. I'm sure you're very familiar with the location. It has frontage on Vineyard Sound, land under the ocean, and there is a coastal beach. The existing structure is shown here. There is beach grass planted in the beach, which was originally mitigation when the project was originally constructed. And what we're hoping to get permission to do is to do the same activities that occur on the public beach directly adjacent. It's actually one beach system. There's a property line separating the two. In fact, we used the orders of conditions that were issued to the town for their overall beach management plan as sort of a general model, and we've adopted or proposed to adopt the same types of methodology and adopt the same kind of general conditions that you issued when you approved the management of the Falmouth Heights Beach. In fact, if everything went according to plan, it may even be done at the very same time, on the very same schedule, if that can be worked out with the beach committee, so that it's in effect, when this beach is, when the activities that are typically done on this beach are done, they wouldn't stop at the lot line, they'd just continue over to this frontage. The one thing that we're also asking permission for is the opportunity to do beach nourishment on an as-needed basis on the beach, depending on conditions through the season between May 15th and September 15th. And we're asking for permission to place 150 cubic yards, possibly once, maybe twice a season, if necessary. If those types of nourishment activities were contemplated, we would notify staff before doing it so that they knew the schedule when that may happen. The other activities are what you typically see happening during the summer season on the Falmouth Heights Beach and other beaches like Old Silver Beach. So we're just simply trying to get permits to do these same activities. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Mike. Jen?
Yeah, Mike, a couple of questions. One, what's your construction access for your beach nourishment?
Well, what we'd like to try to do is deliver the sand to this position and then get access through this location of the Bobcat.
So over the dune that's over there?
Well, there's a dune with a path through it.
Is the path big enough for a bobcat?
There may be some beach grass that would be disturbed. If that's the case, they would just replant the beach grass. But other than that, the only other thing in the area is the beach, actual beach sand itself.
Okay, there are a couple issues I have with that. First of all, the dune behind the behind the building is basically a lot smaller than it was when the building was constructed. So, we'll need to protect the beach grass that's there now. So I don't want any access or any destruction of any more dune in that area. So they'll need to find another way to access that site if they can't protect that dune. So that is going to have to be discussed and conditioned. You have an anticipated volume of 150 to 200 cubic yards. Your statement was just 150 twice a year if necessary, so you'll be restricted to 300 cubic yards if the board allows that to go forward in that area. Also, please advise your clients that currently they are taking all the cobbles. There's a big pile of cobbles and shells that are placed right on the coastal dune and is smothering the beach grass. That will need to be removed, that area mitigated for, and they'll need to find some other way to disperse that on site or remove it. Because right now they're just piling it up again behind that little building that you have in dark gray.
Right.
Yeah, like right behind there at the edge of that dune. There's a photo of it, Madam Chairman, in the file. So that will need to be mitigated, removed and then mitigated for. Other than that, Mike, are you proposing to go to the beach committee? Is FX Casino proposing to go to the beach committee to have the assistant beach superintendent perform the work?
Yes.
Can you, you don't have a DEP number? I actually looked probably about 20 of, so you do have time to possibly try to get a letter out of them. I know a lot of the beach committee has been, or Bruce has been contacted by private beaches, homeowners associations to do that work, and we just need to know who's going to be performing the work out there. If not, the assistant beach superintendent, then if your clients could identify a contractor that they would have perform the work, I'd like that information. Other than that, they're really not asking for anything anything more than the public beach to the east has. It's just the small little dune issues, and your limited work, you're proposing to have the snow fencing installed.
Yeah, we thought it would be a good idea to just put a snow fence in, something that's temporary you can install and then remove, just to be a visual barrier.
I think the snow fencing would be helpful to that area, especially placed in the fall, because it'll help build up the dune behind that. So I do like that idea, and also keep people off that little, what's left of that poor little dune, right behind all the parking area underneath that building. That's it. And could you also request that your clients apply for a certificate of compliance on the building? That's the only outstanding permit on that property. Other than that, Madam Chairman, unfortunately, we don't have a DEP number, so it will need to be continued.
Okay. Court?
Mike, how long do you think it'll take you to get a letter out of the beach committee on that?
Well, I'm going to try to get it as soon as possible, so I'd like, if after we're done discussing it, 2 weeks.
2 weeks, okay. It should be enough time. I just know that Bruce is, and, just triggered my memory when you said it. He gets contacted quite often from the private beach associations. I may be speaking out of turn. I don't think this is going to be a huge issue because it's right next door, but just a letter from either Don or Bruce agreeing to perform the work would be helpful.
Yep, understood.
Thank you. And yeah, we'll have to look at how you're going to get your beach nourishment in there.
Right. On that note, one thing about the snow fencing, realize that the people that occupy the units do need access, so we have to provide, there's an existing path here, and there's an existing path through here. We would like to continue to be able to just maintain the footprints.
Oh, yeah, on either side of the building, that's not a problem.
Court, do you want to wait? Do you want to look?
Yeah,
Pictures?
um,
You can go to Ed if you want.
no, I'm, the beach nourishment, where are you gonna get the sand to put on here?
It would be imported from off-site. It would be compatible grain size.
Yeah, but I mean, do you have a source already?
Yeah, a pit. It would be from a pit.
Upland, in Uplands.
An upland source, yeah.
Okay. And where's the sand gonna go when it leaves the beach?
Probably on the town beach. Prevailing wind being southwest.
I'll just make an observation. I think this winter is, in general terms, illustrated to a lot of people how highly dynamic and fragile our coastlines are. We're very fortunate in Falmouth that the damage from these winter storms were minimal, and that was largely because the prevailing winds came out of the northeast. So Outer Cape and Sandwich and those areas got whacked good. But it could have been Falmouth. Could have been Plum Island. It could have been Chappaquiddick.
It was Plum Island.
So, we have to, when we make decisions about this, and I'm speaking only generally, because we're looking at this project, and 15, 10-wheeler loads of sand is not a big deal. But the reason for my question about where is it going to go, and you say, well, glibly, it's going on the beach next door. But we have to always consider what's Murphy's Law here. If we nourish a beach upflow from the prevailing winds, does it block an inlet that we now have to dredge? You see? We're facing some very, 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 very serious questions along our coastlines, and not just in Falmouth, but all along, in terms of coming up with a policy that's fair to homeowners, but also recognizes the environment. I mean, if our scientists are correct, and they seems to be the prevailing wisdom, except among some circles, that there's global warming and sea level rise and all this stuff, and we're going to see more and more serious storms along the shore. And so we take these measures that basically are kind of, well, I don't want to use the vernacular, but the end phrase is in the wind. Okay? We make these efforts, and then, you put 150 cubic yards of sand on this beach, and you get a good southeast gale, and it's gone. And then you're back in front of us. And to what effect? We all have to consider this. And I'm speaking only in the philosophical sense, because it concerns me. And we are in a very difficult position on this commission, because we're asked to decide on things like this. And this, I think, is a pretty small-scale project with a limited impact. But when you look at the larger picture of how do we manage our coastlines, or in fact, can we manage our coastline? Is that a presumption that we as human beings are somehow better than the forces in nature? I've got some serious questions that I have, and I don't know the answer. Unfortunately, you just happen to hit a chord here.
Do you have any questions for Mike?
And I do not have any
about this
further
project?
questions.
You don't have any, but
I'm done.
But I wrote down some questions for Mike based on your comments. So he'll have to wait till I come along. Ed, it's your turn.
You might have a
More
few
questions.
more when I finish, because Like Mr. Byrd, I feel that while this is a limited project, there are some very serious coastline management issues before us. Principally here, in terms of what's really being asked here is for us to make a very significant policy decision regarding management of our entire coastline, which might be anywhere from 50 to 70 miles, depending upon how you're measuring it. Let's call it 60 as an average. That's the number I usually have in mind. 60 miles of coastline in town. And currently, I think, if my memory is correct, about 3 miles of that coastline is public beaches in town. And a couple of years ago, we spent a lot of time reviewing a beach management plan for all of the town beaches. And that's a nice, big, solid document that is on a shelf in my office and elsewhere, and it's really become the Bible for us. But it's a management plan for the public beaches. And I had some input into that, and I think I might have had some influence in determining some of the decisions that were made. I certainly had 1 vote out of 7. But when that was before us, at one point in time, I do remember a lot of discussions about rack line and cobbles, issues that are before us today as I read the methodology notes. And I made a statement at that time that I felt that while it was very important to leave rack line in place and not mess with cobble and not move sand around on the beaches to groom everything and keep it nice and neat and clean, the opinion I expressed and I continue to hold today is that there is a very overwhelming and significant benefit to the public by allowing some things that we might not allow and don't allow on private properties. And basically, it nets down to, of the 60 miles of coastline, saying something like 5%, we're going to do some things we may be uncomfortable doing, or at least permit them, for the sake of a public benefit. And that's 5%, if you will, for the people. But I also said at the time, well, we're going to leave the other 95%, the rack line in place, and leave it in the natural state for the benefit of what was referred to in those discussions as the critters. And I still feel that way today. If we were to approve what you're presenting before us today and say, on a private beach, you can do everything we do on a public beach, then we have no right when person after person with beachfront property comes in wanting to do the same thing. We have to treat everybody the same. So any decision we make here today on allowing something on a private beach, effectively we're allowing that in the entire 60 miles of the coastline. So that was nothing, if you will, for the critters. So I just say that there's very different, big differences between public and private beach. And I, as you may suspect, I really can't support what is before us because it's very important for a natural process to take place. Particularly, I have real problems with, in this case, raking the seaweed. You're saying you're going to do it between the low water and the high water mark, and you're going to leave that rock line above high water, which you're probably anticipating would be required anyway. But you'll never get rock line above the high water if somebody's taking it in between low water and high water every day. It takes some time to accumulate. You want to grade and regrade sand on the beaches, and I think I just heard reference to, the administrator made references to the dunes on the property and how they're not in the same shape that used to be. When you start grading a beach every day and back and forth and smoothing everything out, you're never going to build the dunes that are there to try and protect the properties behind them. And something here about screening and cobbles. Cobbles play a significant role in maintaining the beaches. Whenever you see a beach that has lost a lot of sand, what you do see is left is the cobble. And underneath the cobble, you have sand which is remaining. But you start taking away all the cobble, then all of those much finer particles are much more likely to drift laterally up and down the coast, and sometimes with unpredictable results. So I have some real problems with removing cobbles. With all of these issues, I have made exceptions in the case of the public beaches in town, because this is a beachfront community. Our economy, in large measure, depends upon attracting tourists, and the public and the tourists like to have nice, neat, and clean, groomed beaches. So I bend in that case, and I say, yes, we need to do that, but that's only on 5% of the coastline. I think my position is clear, and I will pass the
baton on to Michelle.
it's on to Michelle, please.
Do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Thank you. Do you have any questions, Mike?
I do not.
Tommy?
I have a question. Does the town beach, do they do work for private businesses like this? Does
I don't
that
know.
happen
I mean-
in other places?
Jen probably can answer that better than me, but
I know of one other beach association that has utilized the services of the town,
And hired them.
expertise and equipment to groom that particular beach, and that would be the one in New Silver. I know they believe they contracted with Bruce McGardo last year to do the work on their beaches.
Essentially as a contractor.
That, I don't know how it
Yeah, we
works
don't have to
out,
worry
which
about
is
that.
why I've asked
All we need
Mike.
to know is who's going to do it. We need to know who the contractor is going to be.
Yeah.
Well, in this instance, I mean, it seems to make perfect sense that the town does it since they're gonna be there.
Yeah,
anyways. And I'd also, you know, I'd like to see them working together with the town as much as possible, because I don't think that, you know, even though there's a property line, I don't think the public use stops at that property line at this particular beach. And I also think that, you know, 150 yards and a bobcat is a lot more activity than really needs to happen if they could hook up the town for beach nourishment at the same time, if the town happens to be doing any. And they probably have an access where they get a front end loader there. So that's what I would like to see, is just them working with the town to minimize activity as much as possible. And I know that this beach is used like a public beach. That's all I have.
Yeah, and I think Mike will try to provide us a letter from the town saying that, you know, they might be able to help the casino with their beaches, because Bruce is out there quite often in the summer on the town beach, so.
And I just, you know, again, I'd like to see them work in the town as much as possible to have it all happen at once, you know, that seems to make sense, in this site. So,
I have a couple of questions, Mike. The first actually is a comment. It's about those cobbles. Ed's right that the cobbles are part of the system, and you'd be better off not pulling them, but if a lot appear on the surface, you know, during the summer, then they should be saved and incorporated into the dunes to make a bigger dune. They shouldn't be taken off site. That's all part of the, I mean, if you were really going to get compatible grain size to what's on that beach, it's a mixed grain. I don't suggest you do that. I think it would be a waste of your money. You want the nice beach sand. But in fact, those cobbles are part of the,
yeah, we really want a veneer of sand over the cobbles is what we're trying to do on a seasonal basis. That's what we're looking for. So it's a usable beach.
right, but I wouldn't, any cobbles that happen to get accumulated, I would push up against the dunes and hope that they trap more sand
We're happy to accept that as a condition.
as they come in.
I know you have more questions, but you did hear me. We used all the model and the conditions from the beach directly next door. We were willing to adopt the same
Yeah,
conditions.
but I'm just going, I mean, we're talking about what the process is. Courtney and Ed's concerns, this is, you know, we've had beach nourishment ever since I've been on, although seasons like this, we seem to get it more frequently. And, you know, as they both mentioned, one of the things you have to look at is, well, what happens if there's a storm and this sand
Yes.
drifts? So I'm going to suggest to you that it's useful anytime there's a beach nourishment project to give us an aerial that shows us a half mile. I mean, I know what the system is. I think most of us know what the system is there. But it should be part of the record so that we can say, you know, a storm could remove this sand, but it's unlikely that it's going to end up costing the Waterways Committee the money to dredge it.
Yeah, and I think we know
Some
this.
areas are more favorable
Sure.
to beach nourishment than others, and some areas are more stable, and I think that's in that beach management plan
yes.
too. I think one of the things that was interesting is that this is one of the more stable parts, which also is sort of, you know, it's probably worth the money to invest a little bit of a veneer. You might get a storm and it might leave, but you might not.
Exactly.
Oh, I was going to also suggest with the snow fencing. So, are you planning to have the snow fencing there all summer?
No.
Just while they're doing the work?
The snow fencing was simply to make sure we don't have equipment running up and down on top of the beach
Right, so
grass.
somehow demarcate it during the summer.
That's what it is. It's like a limit of
But I agree
work.
with Jen that you should put the snow fencing in the winter.
fall.
That might, and through the winter.
Oh, yeah.
That might help accumulate
Sure.
some more. And the last question is the 300 cubic yards, are we talking total for a 3 or 5 year project, depending on what we give you, or are we saying that's per year?
They're saying annually, so
Okay,
per year.
okay. Okay, that's,
We don't, just to be clear, we don't anticipate needing to do that much. So
Yeah.
if you could think it's excessive, we're happy.
oh, well, I don't know. I mean, I just want the facts, and then we'll discuss it.
We
with the board.
figured, we calculated the area of the beach and made a general determination on, you know, what the thickness of a veneer
would
would
give you a
be,
veneer. Yeah.
and that maybe, you know, sometime towards the end of the season, it might make sense to nourish it again, near the beginning, and then somewhere near the end.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it too much near the end. That's when you're most likely to lose it
You know,
in fall,
near,
winter storms.
somewhere from midsummer, you know, somewhere in August, you know.
For the high season. For the road race. Okay, should we put a continuance on the table and then,
We could continue until when?
2 weeks, Mike?
Yep.
For 2 weeks, whatever that date is.
That would be April 3rd.
April 3rd, at the request of the applicant.
Second.
April 10th we have off, right?
Yes.
Okay. Are there
And
any,
Mike, if you could just outline a construction access, or even if you're gonna be utilizing the town beach for construction access, I agree with Tommy. If we could use access over something other than that little dune, that would be great. Thank you.
are there any other questions on the board before we take a vote? Are there any questions from the audience? Oh,
I just wanna
Mike,
make
you have a question?
Not a comment, and I mean it with all due respect to Commissioner Schmidt. Just a general comment about the 5% public beaches. I don't think that the regulations distinguish between public and private lands as they relate to the resource area coastal beach. And there is a lot of private property in this town that also gets the benefit of having private beach on the property, and it reflects in the real estate taxes that these folks pay. They have the luxury, if that's the right word, to have a private beach in front of them, and I don't think the dynamics of coastal dynamics or the wetland regulations distinguish between public and private beaches. So to start to focus in on only public beaches getting a different level of review and different standards, I think is a slippery slope that we probably shouldn't be going down. And that's all I have
We
to say.
can distinguish between, as Chairman Gladfelter said, the more stable beaches versus
Yeah, I mean,
beaches
that-
and beach nourishment activities that would have a greater impact on wetland resource areas in the vicinity.
Well, that was one of the things that I suggested back before the beach management plan started, that, you know, you have red, yellow, and green beaches. Green beaches are a good candidate for beach nourishment because it's probably going to stay and it's not going to harm anything else if it goes.
I mean, I've been before you.
Red are bad beaches because it's going to wash away right away.
Sure, of course,
And most
absolutely.
of the beaches are yellow.
Assuming though they're all on the same dynamic, I mean, I've been before you on private beaches in North Falmouth that you've approved. I've been before you with private
no.
beaches.
Commissioner Schmidt was stating his opinion.
Yeah, but can I interject something here?
Okay.
My objections aren't to the beach nourishment so much as all of the other maintenance issues and removing rack line and grading and smoothing and removing cobbles.
Yeah.
As you know, I've generally been a proponent of beach nourishment projects, and in fact, we probably have some discussions later today when private property owners want to spend the money to bring in nice, good, clean sand. I have no objections, even though I know, and they know too, that the sand might not last. Hopefully sometimes it drifts onto the town beaches and public beaches. So it's not the idea of beach nourishment is not my hang-up, but it's most of the other things that I did mention here.
Yeah, we'll discuss that.
Yeah, and just one, again, all of the methodologies are adopted from, we used the conditions for that beach as a model, same type of thing. Same things, we expect nothing different as far as.
Nothing more, nothing less.
Exactly.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table. This is the last chance for anyone to make comments on this project until we open it up again. All in favor of the motion on the table to continue this to April 3rd, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Thanks, Mike. Anastasios Perifestis.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just moving forward, the buzzing of somebody's cell phone remind me that I think we would like anyone who has a cell phone to shut it off so we don't get distracted. Thank you.
That was a car alarm.
And also,
Mine on?
we have to say, I see that Mike's there with his recorder. We are being recorded by FCTV, but also by Falmouth Enterprise tonight. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay, Anastasios Perifestis, 60,
Just turning it off.
65 Falmouth Heights Road, Falmouth, Massachusetts. Well, I'm going to lose my bet to Tommy.
No, we're not.
Yeah, you
I'm
are.
not? You're going to give me incentive?
Move forward.
For permission to dredge a 9,000 square foot area to a depth of 10 feet by removing approximately 300 cubic yards of material from Falmouth Inner Harbor for the benefit of 65 Falmouth Heights Road. This project includes the harvest and relocation of shellfish from the dredge area, dewatering the material on a barge, deposition into trucks. How many trucks is that, Courtney? 300 cubic yards? 15 trucks?
At least.
15 to 20 trucks, and transportation to another waterfront location for beach nourishment and to create a coastal dune. Jen, do you have any comments?
I'll save any comments until after Mr. McGrath's presentation.
Good evening, Mike.
Good evening. My name is Michael McGrath. I'm a registered engineer and registered land surveyor. The first thing I want to say is one of the curses of engineers is a thing called carryover, and I'm going to submit a revised plan that eliminates a label here that's not correct. So anyways, it was carried over from an old plan. The work that has been described in the notice is to dredge an area in here that's adjacent to 65 Falmouth Heights Road. This is Falmouth Heights, this is Falmouth Inner Harbor, Robbins Road is here, and there's a shoal area in here, and what we'd like to do is dredge down to 10 foot below mean low water. There are cross sections that have been provided to the commission that shows that the bottom is more or less flat, and then there's going to be a man-made slope along the bulkhead. This was originally, this bulkhead was permitted a long time ago, and on that plan it says dredged 8 feet, but it was not described in the order nor described in the plan, but the cross-section showed. So in any case, there is some indication that perhaps it was dredged. In any case, the proposal is that this waterfront is substantially improved with landscaping that's really mitigation plants. And so we've met with a marine contractor, and he suggests that he will bring his barge in, he will excavate the material down to the correct depth. It'll be dewatered on his barge, then he will actually load it onto trucks that are going to be backed up into this area. If you've been to the site, there's a parking area here that's it's concrete pavers that are pervious because they're setting crushed stone, and then the trucks will go out and take it to an approved disposal site. There's 300 cubic yards here. The notice says that there is land containing shellfish, and so the shellfish will be removed in accordance with the instruction of the shellfish. So I believe this is an approvable project. The dredged material, we furnished you with samples taken from the bottom. It's basically all what I would describe as medium sand. We gave you a complete set of grain size analysis. And there's very little finds in the samples. So are there any specific questions I can answer concerning with the proposed dredging?
Jen?
No, just a funky dredge footprint.
Pardon me? Well,
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that.
Don't make him.
what we have done is we've taken an awful lot of soundings, and we're showing you
I
where where it's shallower than 10 feet. So we're going to dredge right up to, I don't know, a certain distance off the bulkhead, and then there'll be a natural slope.
No, I understand.
So,
It's just not your typical dredge footprint, that's all.
well, there's no reason to be dredging on here. It's 11 to 12
No,
feet.
yeah. And you're using the material for 8 wigwam, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Tommy?
Is this the bulkhead where the hilarium and the eagle tie up?
Yes.
It is. That's my only question. Makes sense.
Mike?
The depth of the bulkhead, is it deep enough for that, if there's some scour along that edge, are you doing it, you're okay?
It was designed by another engineer, but it clearly shows, that's why we're describing, and if you look at page 2, there's a triangular wedge, and that is in line with his plan. So I believe it should be strong enough.
It's a beautiful bulkhead.
The place is
Constructed. It really is. The difference between a geotechnical engineer and a geologist is the engineer wants to know what you're going to do, and the geologist wants to know how to get there. Where I mean, it's kind of surprising, there's no, what depositional mode, get that in, my main purpose is it going to come right back, or is this you'd think this is a one-time project in your own?
I hadn't thought of that to date. There is a big shoal in here that's caused by the Island Fleet.
Yeah.
So some of it, I shouldn't have said it. There's an apparent shoal. that appears to be as
But
a
the-
result of the
There you go, Mike.
maneuvering of a nearby large vessel.
That's a fair description.
Have you ever seen underwater photos of something like that?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, it's spectacular, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, the material is incredibly clean. I am more concerned about where it's going than what it is right there. How are you gonna move?
That's not our, just focus on this one, Mike.
Well, and he's moving, and if
And he
it
has,
was going into a landfill, then it has one set of concerns, and if it's going somewhere else, it has another set of concerns, because it is being moved. And that's-
right, it's being moved
But it's
to an
it's
approved
clean.
place.
It's clean. Normally in a harbor, you find more fines as you go up into the head.
Yes,
There's a natural phenomenon that the organics move up, and when they move up, they usually carry pollutants. But in this, it was surprisingly clean.
certainly is. No more questions?
Partly because there's a nice flow within Falmouth Harbor. Courtney?
No question.
Ed?
I do have some questions. Not so much, I don't have any real questions about the dredging itself, but I do have questions about the use of the materials. I'm kind of surprised that we even have the proposal before us, that is to use the materials on 8 Wigwam Road, which is the
But Ed-
coastline on West
But Ed,
Falmouth.
we're not doing that project now, just,
No, but that's
Well,
where,
well,
that's
it's
where it's
very
going.
relative, because,
well,
because,
it has to go to an approved place.
right,
They
and
can
I can't,
dredge-
I
They can
can't,
dredge it and give it to another approved place other than Wigwam.
well, that's what I'm getting at, yes.
Yeah, and so we will, a part of our condition will be that it has to have an approved disposal site. We may or may not give an approval for a disposal of it. If we don't, then he's got to come up with someplace else that is a good disposal site.
Right, but Ms. McGrath said he had provided samples to us. I haven't seen them, I don't know if the staff has seen the samples. We have a report, and I did read the report and the analysis, and I have a lot of, I don't want to go into the details, I have a lot of questions with it, but it gets into a lot of real technical stuff that I don't think I'm qualified to make judgments on. I'm not sure anybody else in this commission has the level of expertise for some of the chemistry and whatnot and the geological issues here, so, if you really wanted to use that stuff, I would suggest that we invoke the consultant clause, as we call it, and bring a consultant in to really get into some of the technical issues and take a look at some of the materials. Although I realize, I read the report here from Alpha Analytical, and they tell us that they do not save the samples for more than 30 days after the field work was done, and the field work was done about the third week of January, so they would no longer be available to us. I also had an issue with the fact that they maintain a record of possession, if that's the right term, and apparently the samples, when delivered, the containers, whatever, had been opened. The seals were broken, or the labels were broken, or something to that effect. I don't recall exactly. So I have a lot of problems with this particular thing. I think if we were going to allow you to use the sand as you propose, again, we'd need to get some kind of a consultant coming in, but I don't think you really want to do that. I think we've had enough experience with Falmouth Harbor to know that there's a lot of yucky-looking stuff, and every time we have shellfish surveys, the survey people come in and they show us a little jar of all this anoxic mud. And that's been our experience throughout this whole harbor. Shellfish survive only because the thing is seeded, and they're cohogs and not generally not the soft shells. But you don't want to use this on a nice little beach up there where we have a district of critical planning concern. And I don't really think the people on the beach in West Falmouth would like to have this say, and they might not realize some of the issues that I'm really concerned about. It's a lightly used beach up there, but they probably want it to be nice and clean, and I'm really concerned that this stuff wouldn't be clean.
Excuse me, have you watched the town when they dredge? Have you watched?
I have. I watched the last dredging project that we had approved over there, was it Minot? And some of the stuff coming out of the harbor, which we all presume was overwash from the storm, looked a little bit darker and muddier and dirtier than we had thought. And, you know, once the project is underway, you can't stop it, but hopefully that will, and I guess the statement from the people working there, hopefully that stuff will wash itself clean over time. But again, you know, that was marginal. And that was in a much cleaner harbor than this one, which is a commercial harbor, where you would expect to have all sorts of chemical issues. They didn't do the chemical analysis here. They said they didn't have to do it. But in the clause that just talked about that, it's made some reference to the fact there would be no reason to expect any issues with chemical contaminants. And in this very commercial industrial harbor, that's the kind of thing we do expect. So I don't think you want to use this stuff, Mike.
Ed, it's not required. When people do this, if the grain size is above a certain size, it's not required. Where the contaminants are is generally in the fines and the muds, which the contaminants will be coated on. This grain size that you just had, it's, what, 2% less than sand? And it's not required.
I don't have a level of confidence, sufficient level of confidence in that survey to allow that stuff to be used in West Falmouth.
Excuse me, this is a well-established Falmouth firm, Rogue Wave, that's Steve Aubrey.
Let's not have an argument, let's just move on to Michelle.
Mike, I think you might have touched on it, but can you just reiterate how you're going to protect the porous, you said those were porous pavers, that the trucks would be coming in and out of, removing the material, protecting that during the process so that that doesn't become clogged or compacted?
I had not thought about protecting the porous pavers. The threat to the porous pavers, I don't think is from compaction because there was an awful lot of construction equipment down here in the past. That was the access, they did some of the other work, and the equipment was heavy. What would be more concerned is spillage from the trucks. So that's...
Maybe if it can be covered during the process?
I think what we would have to do is put down some kind of filter cloth with mats over it so that it would protect the porous pavers.
Okay, that'd be good, thanks.
I wanted to make sure you knew that the Department of Marine Fisheries has notified the town about time of use restrictions that are in their letter, that there's winter flounder that has been identified as a habitat, and so there's no dredging from January 15th to May 31st, and there'll be no the placement of fill at napped horseshoe crab and spawning beaches would be May 1st. They're not allowed May 1st to July 31st. So I want to make sure you all know that that's in your file.
Yeah, and that would be a special condition.
Yes.
So,
Mike, when you, one.
wait a second.
All right.
I want anybody to think of any other questions. For right now, don't worry about where the stuff's gonna go. It's eventually gonna go someplace that it's approved to go for. So let's just focus on this project. Jen?
Mike, when you revise your plan, I'm assuming you're getting rid of the proposed decking thing?
Yes, decking.
Can you make a note on the filter cloth and mats for the construction access?
Oh, yes, I'll have to
Yeah,
draw
add that as a
a
note to the
typical
plan.
section.
Yep, add that as a note to the plan with the cross-section and remove the proposed decking.
Get rid of the existing building too. up there.
No.
Carryover.
Carry over?
Carry over.
He will.
Okay.
Okay, Mike, you're gonna need a
Daily.
continuance.
Floggings will continue
Until around first.
And there's no more.
You might want to put, like some silt sock or something along the edge of the, if you're gonna cover the parking lot, you might as well just have it a boundary on it.
I understand. I would like a continuance.
Jen, when can he have a continuance?
When would you like a continuance, Mike?
2 weeks? Can't be
Yes.
3 weeks. 2 weeks or 4 weeks?
I can have this done in 2 weeks.
In a week?
At the request of the applicant, I move that we continue this until April 3rd.
Second.
Okay, any other questions on the board? Any questions from the audience? Okay, motion on the table is continuance till April 3rd. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Oh, you're gonna just stay right up there, Mike. Silvestro Calabrese, 8 Wigwam Road, West Falmouth, for permission to create a coastal dune over an existing stone revetment by establishing a construction access route, placement of approximately 200 cubic yards of sand, and plantings of American beach grass. The placement of an additional 100 cubic yards of sand as beach nourishment, replacement of any disturbed naturally vegetated resource area buffer, resource area, and the associated clearing, grading, and landscaping. Jen?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I'll save any of my comments until after Mr. McGrath's presentation.
Mike?
Thank you.
I just want to tell you that we filed for MISA, but we don't have a finding, so we will have to ask for continuance. But let's get started. 8 Wigwam is, it's the most northerly house on the southerly peninsula of the Great Sipuisset Marsh. This is a substantial house. There's 2 layers of riprap. I shouldn't have described as layers. There's a riprap that's on the Buzzards Bay side here. Then there's a flat area that's got cobbles, and then there's another riprap that runs along here. At the top of the upper riprap, there's actually, you can see in places, the top of a buried timber bulkhead. And the proposal is to bring sand, and we had hoped to reuse the sand, and put it and construct a dune that's basically on top of the riprap, on top of the cobbles between this wrap, and bury this riprap. And I've given you cross sections. There's about 200 yards here, and so I have shown some more beach nourishment in this area. Cognizant of what you might be concerned about, I'd like to submit some photographs, and I'd like to explain them.
Can't you thread it through? I guess not.
We might have to share.
Okay, we can share. Jen needs one.
Yeah, but I've now given out a second set that's got a yellow dot on it. And I'll explain the difference in a second. I just need one for me. What I've just done is I gave you a downloaded photograph from Google Earth, and one is image of 2004, and the other one is image 2012. The first set I gave you doesn't have any dots on it, and that's just the way I downloaded it. Then what I did, on the yellow one, I drew a line between the most northerly house on the south side and the most southerly house on the north side. And I just drew a straight line from house to house on both photographs. And the reason I did that is that I have been observing casually, shall we say, and the mouth of this to the Great Sippawasset Marsh, the mouth of the creek has not only moved, but it's grown much, much wider. And in fact, if you look at the 2012 photograph, you'll see that there's been a dramatic movement of the mean high water to the east. So there's been a dramatic loss of sand. Now, this is a special area in that on the south side of the mouth, there is rare and endangered species habitat of at least 3 different species. And so I've been very concerned that we're losing that habitat. That's a very significant habitat. So one of the questions that I expected to hear is what happens if this sand gets moved? Well, right now, it's a
You're going to answer it, we haven't even asked it.
but it's an appropriate question to ask. And the appropriate answer is that this is actually, in my mind, is not going to really significantly affect whatsoever because the volume's too small. But I look at that is that we should be putting sand on that area at the appropriate time so that there's more habitat at the south side of the entrance to the Great Sippawasset Marsh. We have to put that in the right time because there are significant environmental reasons that has to be limited. But I've been out there today and I'm familiar with the project because I've been there several times. And when I stand here and I look at the other house, I'm shocked at the erosion. So you actually denied one time us putting sand here. So I want to remind you of that. But I think that this is important enough. 100 cubic yards is not going to do anything. But in the long run, we should be encouraging this landowner to add some sand. So the description that we talked about was we'd bring the sand here and we would bring it over by Bobcat. And it would be placed on top of the existing cobbles, and some of it would be dumped over and moved by hand in that area. So there is an area that is dune that would be altered. It was staked on the ground, and we would just reconstruct this dune afterwards. Are there any specific questions concerning this activity?
Jen. Mike.
It all seems doable. You're going to do some reconstruction as you go by I guess it's the north end of that house, steps going across that place. The provisions to hold the sand in place while it's being placed across on the bench on the cobble. You'll stay there okay while you're getting grass planted? I know you're not God, but
If there was no significant wind and you got this planted, it would stay until there's a large enough wave to attack it. And a storm like similar to Hurricane Bob would like that, do
Are you going to try to stage it so that, because you can't do the dredging from January to May, and you're not going to do the dredging from May till September, and you can't plant the beach grass until, when, December, January,
Well, yeah, November to April.
November till April. So if you could stage it and kind of do it all at once and get it planted.
I was
Would
not...
that be a good idea?
Yes, the only thing, I don't know if this is within the horseshoe crab, but it wouldn't surprise me it is, because I have seen horseshoe crabs in West Falmouth.
Well, that
On
wouldn't
another
affect
beach.
that wouldn't affect the two dunes that you're making, though.
No, it wouldn't affect this, but it would affect.
Well, then you could store it somewhere
Yes.
till an appropriate time. Mike?
Or we could come to you and put it someplace else with your approval.
The notion of moving things twice never appeals to me. But the notion of stockhand something so that we all get a chance to take a really look on what this stuff looks like. We get little cores, and I think no one might be able to look like, but you don't know. Perhaps that's an advantage.
You're okay?
No questions.
Michelle?
So are you covering it with like a jute matting until the grass is established?
I didn't think of that. I guess we don't show that as a crust.
I think that's what maybe Mike was getting at. Until the grass grows, how are we going to keep the sand there? Maybe covering it with some sort of erosion control product.
I understand.
Biodegradable erosion
Oh,
control?
yeah.
That would be perfect.
Yeah.
Then
Hold
you'd
it.
add a
Discuss
little-
that with
Then
Keith
you'd add a
out in the
little
field.
organics to it and help that grass grow.
Well, it's beach grass after all.
Most of the things I've seen are too refractory, shall we say. But we can cover it with something that's biodegradable.
Ed?
Yes, Mr. McGrath, I'm presuming that the property owner sometimes uses the beach and might even use that section between the two parts of the,
He has many grandchildren.
right. So my second question is, don't you think your property owner would really prefer to have nice, good, clean, white sand, free of any pollutants or contaminants or dark, black, yucky stuff that you might find in Falmouth Harbor?
If I have data that says that it's not mucky stuff, there is indeed a risk, as there in any soil test. But
Is your client aware of that?
I will
just
make
say,
sure.
I
he's
think you're
aware.
climbing much happier with nice, clean, white sand. Anyway, that's all I have to say.
I would think if the commission feels strong enough, they would allow me to do this with sand from Cape Cod Aggregates or Lawrence Lynch, in that case. I was just trying to
I know.
And we can discuss that.
All right.
reuse what was
Have it tested again.
an apparent resource.
Yeah, it could be tested again.
Yes,
as a
sir.
condition too. Court,
I'm looking at the photographs you gave us that have the baseline added, and you have an image date of 3/11/2012. And then I look over here and it says Google. Is that the actual date of the image or the date you downloaded it?
No, I downloaded these today. If you
So
know how to
this was
use
actually
Google,
taken on the 11th, that's what I
Yes.
want to know.
and
Of last year.
this,
Oh, 2012, yeah, I'm sorry.
what
I'm
Google
off
actually has, is layer upon layer upon layer of
Yeah,
already
yeah.
photographed.
No, I understand.
which would have been nice,
That's a good
actually,
question.
because if you just show us two endpoints,
not
it
sure
really
we
doesn't tell us
Know
how
what we're looking at.
that
Um,
coastline's been changing.
It's,
So perhaps since you're going to be coming back, you could give us a little flip chart of
I was trying.
11 years' worth.
Yes. But no matter what, I will tell you, my personal observation is I was alarmed about how much this is degraded, because we have tried to facilitate the Mass Audubon in their efforts to protect the resource areas up there, and I've been sort of horrified that it's going away.
You only have to give us one copy, Mike, for the record. But,
Yes, I'll give you,
no, we don't need 6, 7, 8, 9 copies. One
No,
copy
no,
for the record, and we'll all look at it.
I would like to see the same thing. I'd like to see more images, because when I look at this, yes, it's changed, but the biggest change I'm looking at is the fact that the mouth of the
Right, which you would
has
expect.
is shifted,
it's
which
gotten cut- it's
is going to
gotten cut off.
cause that
That's what
whole thing to move a little bit, but when I look at the
For those of you who
shoreline,
don't
it
see
hasn't changed that significantly.
You see where the mouth is here? That was that was 2004, and now the mouth has shifted.
Which is what it should do.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very dynamic
So,
system there.
you know, I'm,
But we understand your
Yeah.
concern, Mike.
anyway, you know, that's an observation. Again, it follows up on my comment earlier on a different case about the fact we've got a pretty dynamic coastline.
System. I just have one comment about where you're planning to put the dunes and the beach grass, which I don't have a problem with that, but I just do remember back in the history, those of us have a long history with this, and the history prior to us with it, that was going to be used for mitigation planning.
Well, it'll be real, if you remember, I told you that it was unsuitable for mitigation plantings. And so we
Well,
took it off and we
I think we
substituted.
told you that it was unsuitable. It was listed as mitigation plantings. When you inherited the project, it was listed as mitigation plantings.
And by mutual agreement.
By mutual agreement, we all agreed.
I remember Mike saying that it was unsuitable as well.
Right.
But now, I just have one thing to add, just for historical. At the end of Old Homestead Lane was the old Saconaset Homestead and was one of the oldest houses in Falmouth. And the lady that used to live there showed me a photograph of a three-masted schooner that was anchored inside the Great Sippewasset Marsh.
Oh, that's
So,
neat.
It was very neat.
So I have one historical thing, just historical back to when we had this project a few years ago. And that, if I walk that beach, certainly hope to see the signs that give permission.
That's another thing I talked to
The
Mr.
Chapter
Engstrom
91.
about in the field.
The Chapter 91 signs
They were not
that
there.
give permission to go across that area.
What the license says is the department provides it and we put it up. They were put up.
And they disappeared in a big wave. Is that what we're doing?
Well,
I also know that I posted no trespassing all up and down near the rare and endangered species habitat because I was horrified at some of the activities that some people were doing. On 4th of July, they set off fireworks next to some of the nests. Not a very appropriate and environmentally sensitive thing to do.
Have we gotten to the point where we're going to have a continuance?
I so
I'm
moved.
hoping we get there soon.
Are we wrapping in the other files, the previous projects into this one?
Would you like to?
Sure.
I mean, because we have seen the proposed beach nourishment before.
Yeah,
So-
we'll wrap the other files in.
We can wrap the file on the proposed beach nourishment prior to that. Would you like the house one
Yeah, I don't
wrapped
think
in
we
as
need
I
well?
don't think, no.
Just the beach nourishment one, okay. Mike, when did you submit your application to Natural Heritage?
At the same time,
So, oh, so you should have a comment back by the 3rd for now.
yes.
You want the 3rd? Yeah, not
Yes.
knocking on wood.
Well, this is, their third's going to be deja vu
All over again.
all over again. Okay, could we have a,
At the
I'll move
request
that
of
we
the,
continue this at the request of the applicant to the 3rd of April.
second.
okay, any other questions? Any questions from the audience? Okay, hearing or seeing none. Motion on the table is continuance to April 3rd. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. William McGann, 5 Foster Road, East Falmouth, for permission to establish a 12-foot construction access route, completely remove the existing filtered fabric and most existing riprap rocks, and to reconstruct and expand the existing riprap revetment with new materials, the planting of beach grass, replacement of any disturbed woody vegetated resource area buffer/resource area, and associated clearing, grading, and landscaping. Jen,
Would it,
what do
would
you
it
say?
make sense, since we have an amended, and the release of the same thing would be considered together?
Jen, you have a problem with that?
No, not at all. Actually, that would be
Okay, just,
helpful if you got, can you do that, Pat?
Present both at once?
Well, yeah, one then the other, and we'll
Yeah, yeah,
open them
sure, that's
both
fine.
and we'll close them, and that'll be
Yeah,
great.
that's fine. Okay.
Because there is a discrepancy between the two plans I need to
yeah, Mike, don't
point
go
out.
because there's a problem between your
We
two
have-
plans.
We have a discrepancy with your plan.
Sorry, Mike.
Okay, so just so everybody's clear what we're doing, there's a request to amend the existing order of conditions on the same lot, and so we're going to open both of them the same, and so we can hear them because they're kind of related projects. William McGann, 5 Foster Road, East Falmouth, requests to amend the existing order of conditions, DEP number 253535, to establish a 12-foot construction access route, the placement and grading of approximately 175 cubic yards of compatible sand on the front side of the coastal dune, the replacement of any disturbed woody vegetated resource area buffer/resource area with bayberry, and the associated clearing, grading, and landscaping. Jen, that's a good idea.
No, I'll save any of my comments on either project until after Tara's presentation.
Hi, Tara.
Hi, my name is Tara Martin. I'm a coastal geologist at the Woods Hole Group, and I represent Bill McGann from 5 Foster Road. I'm here tonight to request permission to reconstruct the existing rock revetment at 5 Foster Road. It is shown on the attached engineering drawing here. The revetment has been in place somewhere between 40 and 50 years. It is a grandfathered-in structure under the State Wetlands Protection Act and also the Falmouth Wetlands regulations. I have been to the site with Jen and Madam Chair. We have looked at this site and this revetment. I think that we all agree that it is in disrepair and it needs to be replaced. What we plan to do is use the same construction access that we used in 2009 for the dune reconstruction project. We propose to use this access not only for the revetment repair, but also for the coastal dune restoration, which I will present after this. Construction access will be through here. It will be temporary. When we used this construction access in 2009, when we planted it, it restored completely. The plants came back, the woody species came back. I've been out there numerous times with Jen. There were no issues with reestablishing the vegetation within that construction access. Temporary construction access along the beach here during the length of construction. I estimate this will take 6 to 8 weeks to complete. Most of the existing stone that is here is not properly sized for the revetment. I don't know if this revetment was even designed, by an engineer when it was originally constructed. But we'll be removing everything. We have done an engineering analysis to show how deep the toe stones need to be, the type of filter fabric, the size of the armor stone, the elevation at the top. If you've been to the site and you've seen this, you can see that on the western side that the revetment has actually slumped and some of the stones have actually moved out onto the coastal beach. So by removing all of those stones there, actually widening the beach a little bit because of the slumping there. The design was done by Kurt Bosman. He's a professional engineer at Woods Hole Group. The site survey was done by Holmes and McGrath, which is why Mike is going to have to answer the questions about the discrepancy, I guess. The engineering design is shown here. It shows the size of the toe stones, the filter fabric, all of the engineering characteristics of the wall. Obviously, lots of notes here, mostly about the engineering design. We will re-establish any vegetation that was touched during the course of the project. We'll make sure that the tire marks on the beach from the trucks that are delivering the stone are graded when we're finished. Nothing is being proposed down at the mean high water mark or below. I think the project is pretty straightforward. I think that if you've been to the site, you realize that this structure has been pretty badly damaged over the past, I don't even know, 10, 15, 20 years.
Are you done?
I think so.
Should we, did you give the other? You want to give the other project too?
Oh, you want to do them together?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you wanted to finish.
No.
Yeah, that's fine, we can do the other one too.
Then we'll have questions.
Okay. The second phase of this project is actually being heard under an amended order because we have an existing order of conditions that is still open at this time. We agreed back in 2009 when we got the existing order of conditions that if we ever requested or wanted to put more sand down, that we would amend and come back and ask permission to do any restoration of the dune if there had been erosion. So the proposed project includes this area right here to the west of the revetment. Has been scoured out over the past 4 years. We're proposing, once we finish the revetment, to restore this area so that the front side of the dune becomes flush with the front side of the revetment. It will call for about 175 cubic yards of sand. It's not a beach nourishment project. This is strictly dune restoration. This dune has had erosion over the past couple of years. We've been hit with 2 hurricanes and a couple of really big storms, including a blizzard this year, that have caused erosion along this section of shoreline. If you refer back to the project description, when we first proposed this project back in 2009, we actually did modeling of this area of the coastline because we did 5 dune restoration projects right in a row. We ran a model, a numerical model called S-Beach to model where the sand was actually going to go if it eroded during a storm. It showed that most of the sand eroded during the storm actually stays pretty high up on the beach. Even during a big storm event, which is a 50-year storm event, which is huge. 50 years, even bigger than Hurricane Bob. 50-year storm event, the sand moves only out about as far as the outer edge of the existing groins. So sand that's eroding from this area is moving out and is getting trapped between these groins during like really big storm events. Otherwise, it's coming out in small pulses during storms and it's being, dispersed on the intertidal beach and in the shallow areas between the groins. There's no eelgrass here, not been mapped by DEP. There's no evidence that there's eelgrass offshore of this site. So this is the cross section. It's got a 3-to-1 slope on the front side. It extends about 25 feet from where the erosion starts right now. And again, it will be flush with the front side of the revetment. When the dune is restored, it will actually bury the end return of the revetment, which is this section right here. And again, will be planted like we did the last time.
The construction access.
Yeah, and the front side
And
of
the
the dune.
dune,
We will
right.
restore the dune again, and we will put the sand in the front.
Okay. Jen?
Okay, construction access is the issue I have with the discrepancy of the 2 plans.
Okay.
Your construction accesses are different.
It's what?
They're different. Look at your plan from Woods Hole Group and look at Mike's plan.
Oh, because this one shows it coming a little bit from the driveway.
You've got one that's abutting the property line at 12 feet and the other one moved in. Which one are you using?
This one here.
Which plan?
The
Your plan.
first plan.
Woods Hole Group's plan? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a preference as to which one we use.
No, I just want them to be the same. I don't want 2 different construction access. So make sure whichever construction access you use is big enough for both projects.
Okay, yeah, we
That's-
need 12 feet.
You need 12 feet? Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. Just, Mike, you'll need to amend your plan to match the construction access. Okay?
That's all. You don't have to
and-
say anything, Mike.
Just nod, Mike. Thank you. And replant it because, yeah, we have gone out there, the plantings did look really well. They're not looking so good right now. You have where you have your beach grass and then where the woody plants start, you've got an area that just looks like a dirt driveway. So,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
look,
They did, they
yeah.
were doing
They were
great.
doing well, they're not doing so well anymore. So we'll
Okay,
just need
that's
to,
fine. I think we
really
agree.
look at that. You have supplied the monitoring reports for the original beach nourishment project. I don't have any issues with recreating the dune on that property. And that wall, I know the easternmost corner of that wall is failing. So I really don't have too many issues with that. Make sure you stay during the construction access on the applicant's property. And Sarah, we had talked a while ago when you were going to come back for the beach nourishment projects to possibly remove the old bulkhead that was in front Did you give any thought to that, or?
No bulkhead on the rear end.
The timber plant, the little things that stick up out of the water, the old.
Oh, well, for a long
bulkhead
time,
remnant.
Yeah, they
your
said no,
commission
and
was
then
really
you and
torn
I had
over
a
whether or not they
conversation.
wanted that done.
Yeah, and then I had a conversation with you when we were first talking about that, of possibly flush cutting them or removing them. I didn't know if you had just given any more thought to that.
No, but I mean, if it's something that you'd like to see, then I can certainly talk about it with the applicant and
Okay.
see if he's willing to do that.
It's really up to the applicant, so let.
Well, the first
let
time
us know.
around, I know the commission was
No,
really
they-
against it,
they
and then you
weren't.
guys had a change of
We
heart.
didn't really know what it was, and.
Because they go all the way down that whole, a
I
lot
know.
of those people would like to
I
get
know
those
that.
out of there.
So, anyway,
They get 'em
that
out,
was it,
yeah.
just revised, the amendment plan to have the same access as the revetment plan.
Okay.
And that was it, that was the discrepancy, you just had
Okay.
your access
Yep.
was shifted 12 feet over, and I just wanted to make sure you use one and not
Okay.
both.
Yep.
That was it.
Mr. Byrd.
What effect does the stone riprap have on the deterioration of that dune?
In this area right here?
Right. I mean, in other words, you have a storm, southeast gale, 60-mile-an-hour winds, blowing right up on that thing. You've got all that water. Does that accelerate the action at the end of that to create the deterioration of the dune? Or do we have an ongoing problem here so that we're kind of throwing sand at this thing every 3 or 4 years in order to do it because in fact, the riprap is acting as a accelerant, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, consider the fact, though, that there are a series of groins here. So something coming out of this direction, which is what's gonna cause the end effect erosion here, those huge waves are not moving onto this property in this direction. Because you have
No,
a huge
I'm
coastal
I'm
engineering
posing a
structure.
question. I mean, in other words, if
I mean,
all
yeah,
these structures
typically-
weren't there, would this dune be as vulnerable as it appears to be? I'm wondering this out loud, because I'm not a scientist. You
Yeah,
are.
I mean, typically.
Yeah, I'm not an engineer, I'm just a lowly builder, and I look at these things and I don't know any better. It's like a poor country lawyer, and I'm just trying to understand, and I figure you're the expert.
They do. I mean, typically you do get end effect erosion, you know, at the end of structures. I mean,
Okay.
it's common, it happens in most places. I think that the erosion is, usually it's right in the direct vicinity. The erosion along here is pretty consistent along here. I think that what you're probably more getting is water coming through in this orientation because you've got a structure here, you've got a structure here. You don't have huge waves making it along the coastline in this direction or in this direction because you've got these two huge groins here.
Southeast,
So-
yeah, okay, and that's what I mean, I guess I'm sort of thinking out loud, if that structure, if all these structures weren't along there, would this dune be as vulnerable? And I don't know the answer to that, I'm just throwing it out
It would, yes, it would be.
contemplation.
I think the dunes are eroding everywhere along the south shore of Falmouth. I mean, I think even when you go to the public beaches and you look and see, I think that they're eroding everywhere. Yes, typically you do get end effect downdrift of a coastal engineering structure.
No other questions?
Mr. Schmidt.
Yeah, I want to clear up what I believe is an inadvertent error. Or maybe it's a difference in the project which resulted from some of the discussions with the staff. But as this project was advertised, it says the plan is to reconstruct and expand the existing riprap. Now, everything you presented says nothing about expanding. The plans before us, I don't think, show any kind of an expansion. I just want to make sure, and maybe we ought to have a little special condition spelled out, or maybe we always do, that there will be no
That's my
expansion
question,
Yeah, that's
too.
a good
permitted.
question.
Right.
There's no expansion of the structure. I don't
Yeah, I don't know how
what
it got in.
that
It's
description-
on the agenda tonight, and it certainly was in what was advertised.
If they are gonna change the size of the rock, because the rock that's there is pretty
Yeah,
small.
but that's
But
not
not the
expanding the
footprint.
Right.
structure.
It's
not the
occupying the
footprint.
same footprint.
Same footprint and importantly, the same height. So
Yes.
I would like to ask, and I think it should be a condition, that you provide us with some good before and after photographs
Sure,
so that we can
yep,
be able to make sure that everything is hunky-dory.
absolutely.
That's it.
I know that the existing rock is not big enough, or some of the rock isn't big enough, but will you be able to reuse any of the rock that's on site?
If we can reuse it, we will. Anything that can be used, maybe some of the stones would be used for the underlayers, the
Yeah.
smaller stuff. So whatever can be reused will be if it's the appropriate size. Otherwise, it will just be hauled off and taken back to, you know, the shop or,
Disposed in an appropriate place.
oh yeah.
And then the other question, I think,
You said, back to the shop? You didn't
That's
really-
shop.
what she said.
Yeah, I think that's cute.
Back to the contractor shop. They usually
Oh.
take, when stone comes out of a revetment like this that's not appropriately sized, they usually take it back and they chop it up and they make smaller, like chinking stone for other projects. So it will get reused, but maybe not on the site.
okay. And when, on the amendment plan, you're building the dune back up, did you say you're planting that dune too?
Yes.
The front of, the face of it, not
Yep.
just the top? Okay. I wasn't sure if that was clear. Right, I just, in terms of where it says it's gonna be planted.
Oh, I don't see any.
I don't see any limit
I don't
of
see any
plant.
little pieces of beach
Well, and it
grass.
doesn't show it on this plan either, that it's gonna be planted.
We will be replanting the dune.
Is this
Okay.
Mike's plan? Mike, you might add beach grass on the front.
We're gonna
I mean,
have to
this
blame
shows some
We're gonna have to blame this
proposed-
on Tim, because Mike didn't do the drawings, Tim Santos did. So, we will plant the dune.
Okay. Thank you.
Mike?
No questions.
Mr. Bose?
No questions.
I'm just gonna say, Tom's not here tonight, but Tom would ask to make sure that whatever equipment is on the beach to do this has the right kind of oil in
That's
it.
right.
And Jen knows the right wording
Okay,
for that. Ecologically friendly oil.
okay. Like vegetable oil?
Vegetable oil.
I'm not exactly sure what's in the excavator right now, but Jen and I can talk about that to make sure it's
Are we
appropriate.
talking about
Change it out.
just olive oil or extra virgin olive oil?
Oh, well, I don't know. We'll have to check with Tom on that.
All right.
But anyway, that's what we'll
Okay,
require.
yeah, I'll discuss that with Jen.
Okay, so we have two projects. One is to rebuild the riprap, and the other is an amended order.
Your rebuilding of the riprap will have to be continued because you do not have a DEP number and your amendment can be closed.
How exciting.
Well, wait,
No
the
DEP
amendment,
number for this?
even with the wrong access?
Not as of,
Yeah, the amendment has the wrong access.
yeah, we need a plan for the access. As of 20 of 6, this one did not have a DEP number.
Wow,
So how about if both of
It's not,
them,
I checked online.
okay.
how about both of them are April 3rd? They should be quick.
The request of the applicant?
Well, wait a second.
Well, I have a request, can I do that?
You have a request. You don't like April 3rd?
No, I do, but is it,
I don't.
because we would like to get this project constructed this year, and I don't want to run out of time with, you know, people coming to enjoy the beach, you know, Memorial Day and all that other stuff. Is there some way that we can,
Do it next week.
if you're going to vote to approve this, is there some way we can close the hearing and you can vote to approve it contingent upon receiving a DEP number? No?
No.
Okay.
But we could do it next week, maybe, if a number
We're
comes
talking
in.
about, what, 2 weeks?
Could we do it next week?
Yeah.
Mike will get his amended plan to Jen by Friday, so staff has time to look at it. won't they?
Will that work for you?
Sure.
Can I have the money?
No. Of course you can add till Monday, Mike. I couldn't even say that with a straight face. 'cause
Okay,
it's
next-
gonna hurt too much.
Next week is March 27th?
Correct. Yeah, I'll
Okay.
move that we request the applicant to
Wait,
move to continue both of these hearings until the 27th of March.
Second.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the table. To continue both of these hearings until March 27th. Are there any other questions on the board at this time? I know there's some questions from the audience. Yes,
She needs to come up here to do it.
yes. She's coming.
Need my name too?
Yep, we need
Priscilla
to
Moore.
tell us who you are.
Priscilla Moore.
Thank you.
I'm interested in that one of the signs on the beach says "End of Renourishment," and it is well away from what is there on the plan. And I can't understand how the renourishment is going to be even with the end of the revetment, if I said that word right. And I wondered also, too, the removing of the old stones and replacing the new ones seems to go right next to the next property. And I know I'm thinking ahead, the next property is not going to have any renourishment. The one after that is. Will it not have some detriment to the water flow in that area, creating more erosion, since they are not all going to have the renourishment? Secondly, but very important to me, is that the right-of-way of the public to enter the beach from the public beach is often held up by a rope or a sign or an actual intimidation. And that has caused a lot of problems with those who are going to the beach, children who are playing on the beach, that their rights just to walk on the edge of the water to go along the shore towards Minot. That's usually inside of those two columns or pilings that you were referring to. Those were there with rocks in between them to, I gather, to sustain that whole shoreline. It went from the heights clear across and down to Minot. So we sort of, when you're on the public beach, you're kind of at odds whether those should be removed, because we seem, because of the southeast wind, to have quite a nice beach most of the time and 40 feet of beach. And I understand the movement of the water and the erosion that takes place. I want to make sure that access to the public, for the public to walk those beaches, is not impinged upon by anything that's put up. I think it's very important that that maintains, and everybody knows to keep their feet wet, and everybody knows the mean low tide and things like that. Oftentimes in front of those rocks, the height of the water is one lounge chair in length, and that's it. So if anybody is going to walk along in front of the water, they will bump into the owner and or be reprimanded for walking on the beach. I know you cannot put that in your orders, but I think we should not have ropes or pilings. Those in the water I can't make a decision about in my mind. But no prevention. When the snow fence is put up to maintain the renourishment, it often breaks off in the next season, and it's still on the public beach. A huge piling by itself is still on the public beach, which leads to water going up and edging in along that piling. It is known by the owner that it is there. I think that's important, that they clean up and pick up things that have come from this renourishment and the maintenance of that area, to have it cleaned up and take responsibility for it. Now, any questions? Is that naughty of me? But this is important for the many of us that use that nice little beach.
Okay, let me answer
Yes.
what falls under our jurisdiction.
Okay.
And we understand exactly where you're coming from. But one is the rebuild of the revetment. My understanding isn't going to go to the property line. It's the western part of the revetment. Is that correct?
It's going to be right where it is right now.
And that is east to the next property?
Right, and the adjacent
Okay.
property has a vertical bulkhead
Okay.
right now, so
Okay.
it basically is going to match up with an existing vertical structure that's already there.
Mm-hmm. But on the west side of that, that's subject to a tremendous, you just spoke, erosion of from the waves, but we do have a nice beach when it comes from the southeast, which is why it was this winter perhaps up. Well, you look down maybe 7 feet to where those pilings are, they're in the water. So it is moving all the time, but I do not think people should be blocked. Is that part of
So,
it?
well, the other part, I was going to say, that's a state law that people are allowed to pass between mean high and mean low water. But that's not our jurisdiction.
Well-
But what is our jurisdiction, the other point I want to make, is any materials that are left on the beach by a property owner are supposed to stay on that property. And we can put as a condition, Jen, that,
To come and pick it up?
they have to, ensure
Yeah.
that anything that's put in, any kind of snow fence that may be put in to stabilize that during part of the year, has to maintain on that property. And if it doesn't, and if we hear it repeatedly, then we're not going to be able
It's very
to allow
valuable.
that to be on there.
Yeah, it's a very valuable, pre-treated, so tall, piling that's been sitting there, and I can't,
It's on the town beach?
yeah.
Well,
I've got a note to have DPW check it
yeah,
out.
I was going to say, call Jen, and Jen will call DPW.
I will have them. look
Thank
at
you,
it.
Jen.
Not a problem. I have a note.
All right, thank you very much for
You're
listening.
welcome.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Mike?
Mike Kinney, just a Davisville resident and observer for a number of years down there. I just one comment. I particularly like Mike's driveway better than the other one because the town here has a lot of old vegetation, and I think that if you back up this exit, this road, the Woods Hole Group's plan is right along the town line.
Yeah, so you'd rather have it in
I'd
from
rather
the
have
line?
it in, the way it's staked out.
Yeah.
We can, all
Yeah,
right, we
sure.
can shift it. Is that
That's
okay?
fine, I'm okay with that.
Okay, one other thing, Tara, your plan will have to be revised.
Okay, that's fine.
And when you
Mike's still has to
submit-
be revised also.
Yeah,
to
Mike's
reflect
has
where
to
the
be
seagrass
revised
is.
on the dune grass.
To add the grass.
To add the dune grass. Yours is gonna be revised to shift that access.
Okay, yep.
And also, have a land surveyor stamp it. It's something new. The board wants to see land surveyor, especially since, property lines have been a hot topic lately, not just here, but in other parts of town. I'd like to see a surveying stamp on it.
Yeah.
Okay, I see the
Both of
engineer
these plans are
stamp.
Mike's.
Hmm?
Both of these plans are Mike's. We only did the engineering design and gave them the cross-sections to put on the drawing.
Excellent. Mike, have Joel or yourself stamp Woods Hole Group's plan, please.
Yes,
said
just
there
say
was
yes.
your plan.
Professional land.
Right, and
Just
we'll
add-
stamp
just
the
say yes,
dust.
Mike.
Land surveyor, yes.
Wait, you told me not to speak before.
No, you can just nod,
Mike.
so we know you understand.
Oh, I know he understands.
Okay, so there's a
We
motion
clear
and
on
a second
who's-
on the table.
Whose plan gets what?
Yes.
You're shifting,
We're shifting the
you're
access.
adding grass. Both are continued to next week.
Till next week. And are there any other questions
And double check with DEP on your number.
I will
Okay.
tomorrow.
before we take the vote? Yes. You have to come up too and tell us who you are. I know.
Hi, my name's David Jones. I reside at 10 Foster Road, which is across from where Bill McGann's property is. I don't have any problems if they can do a beach renourishment and rebutment that'll actually hold the sand, because I've seen it since, 2009. 3/4 of the sand that was put in there at that point is probably gone out to sea or in adjacent properties. After that project was originally done, it did help to encourage a flooding on the end of Davisville Extension and Foster Road, where Shivers Land abuts to it. Now, the town did put in a drainage system just this past year, which they do have the natural jute down in there, and they're supposed to continue, I believe, putting in grass or something else. So My one concern is if we can help keep that drain that was just put in and is still being completed, make sure that doesn't fill in and is still used properly. Because what happened after the last time, the land used to go down low. It actually originally, and I found pictures along with Brazil's help that show that was an inlet way back in time before I was born, back when my grandfather was a child, and was a wetland area. Now it's been filled in over time, and the grade was also raised up, which did not allow the water to settle down in there. And it was mainly all vegetation that, like a buffer. I do landscaping myself, and some properties we've done near the coastal, if there's a lawn area or whatnot, people want a buffer so it'll help collect or keep the oils and contaminants from reaching the ocean. That was a natural buffer area that did do that and took a large area of water that drained down from Davisville and Foster Road, that being the lowest spot. It was reconditioned with sand all the way up to Foster Road, which ideally was one of the reasons for the water to pond up and become a lake at the end there. The town did so far do a pretty good job, I believe, with Lawrence Lynch's help, and I would just like to see that stays that way, because I know with construction, and that is a dirt road still, lean down there, that it can get disturbed and encourage the silt and sand to go in that drainage. Then I'll have over 1.5 feet of water in my garage, which happened after the first nourishment project.
Yeah, I think
So,
that's another condition that we have to
I
have.
already have that
There should
down.
be pictures before and after, and it has to be restored.
right, and I
To
just
the-
want
to
to
the
see,
same-
I'm curious how long the drainage will last too, knowing that there's soil all around it, and until they complete it, I'm not sure exactly how they're going to keep it from keep filling in, or if there's a maintenance program that helps to keep that working that way. But that's just my concern, and
Yeah,
whatever
well,
they
that's
do, I mean, I want to see the beaches all complete and we all have a good time in the summer and whatnot, but I wish I had more knowledge to know exactly how to do it, because we brought in a lot of sand was brought in originally and in very quick time disappeared, and I'm just curious to see if we're going to do a project that'll help retain it better this
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, but that's a valid concern. I mean, with heavy equipment coming in, and
Exactly,
they're
and
gonna
it's right on the
have to
corner.
be trucks to carry these big rocks back to the shop.
Right, and they'll be doing
So-
K-turns to come in and out of
Right.
there, I'm sure, and want to disturb the road. If there's some way it could get recompacted properly or whatnot, and as well as at the end near where I believe is access route going down the beach, he does have drains that were put in right at the end of his driveway, and I noticed it keeps getting filled in with sand. If that can also be acknowledged to be kept cleaned out
As
as
a
well.
drainage area.
Just so our drainage works. I mean, a lot of money was spent to go into the project, so
Yeah.
it'd be nice to keep going on, so.
Good. Well,
That's
thank
my
you.
main concern, and hope everything goes well.
Yep, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the table for continuances for this notice and for the amendment to March 22nd. 27th. Any further questions? Okay, we'll take a vote on the notice first. All in favor of a continuance to March 27th, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Now we'll do a vote on the amendment. The amendment is continued to March 27th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved.
Thank you.
Okay. Continued request for hearings under a notice of intent. Town of Falmouth Water Quality Management Committee, care of Stephen Rafferty, Little Pond Estuary in the west end of Narragansett Avenue, East Falmouth, for permission to access Little Pond at the west end of Narragansett Avenue to cultivate oysters using floating bags, maximum of 2,000 floating bags, 20 strings of 100 bags, as part of the shellfish propagation demonstration project. Jen?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I will save any of my comments until after the applicant's presentation.
Okay. Good evening.
We have a PowerPoint for you.
All right.
I think the lights.
Projector.
This sounds like it's actually on. All right, see it?
Yeah, it's coming.
We're probably gonna turn one more set of lights off.
Two more sets off. About three more sets. Good. Yeah.
Okay, is that done? Can you see all of it?
Can you see?
Okay. My name is Ron Zweig, and I'm on the Water Quality Management Committee, and I will be making just a few opening remarks. But first, I'd just like to thank the commission and for all the assistance we've gotten so far and guidance in preparing this demonstration project. And just also, I'd like to recognize some of our co-workers in the room who've been involved in this, and we have. We have Virginia Valiella from the committee and Steve Rafferty, who's vice chair of the committee, and Sia Karplis, who's a technical assistant, and I guess Priscilla, who has gone, but she was on the previous committee who also endorsed this concept in the Comprehensive Plan Review Committee. And we have John Brawley also from the Woods Hole Group, who's the consultant on this activity. And I would just like to start a little bit, just to give a little background about the concept again, and to go through a few points. This is obviously Little Pond in last, I guess it's late fall, and next. And one thing about Little Pond is that in terms of the water quality, as we all know, the South Coast estuaries are pretty heavily impacted from nutrient pollution basically that's coming in, and through FACES work, it's been characterized as being in very poor condition. And what's important and therefore one of the big major focuses of our committee's activities and town's activities is looking at ways to attenuate the pollution as well as and mitigate the impacts. So one important thing to this now is if you go out to Little Pond today or over the winter, it'll look pretty good. The water will be rather clear. It's got high oxygen from measurements that are being done. It's transparent, and there's no odor. So basically over most of the year, actually, it's in pretty good shape. It's in the summer months that it really has problems. Next. So if we look at these are basically the sources of the nutrients coming in. We've got stormwater runoff. A high proportion comes from septic systems and flows through groundwater into the estuaries. We've got decomposing organic matter on the bottom, which is called benthic flux, and atmosphere rain from the atmosphere via rain, and also fertilizers that are used in the area. Next. So if we look at this, we can see this is sort of how it breaks down. This is from the MEP report, the Massachusetts Estuaries Project report, that basically breaks down the nitrogen in particular, and that's one of the major focuses of the project the program is to reduce nitrogen, which is the key element. And if we look at this pie chart here, we can see that the major sources really, like 40% of the nitrogen coming in is coming from septic systems in the lower watershed area. 21% is coming basically from septic systems from north of Route 28 in sort of the upper watershed part. And then there are others from, the atmosphere is actually quite a large component, some from benthic flux from the bottom, and some from runoff. So what it is that in looking at how to deal with this, there are lots of different interventions that the committee is looking at. One is sewering and, say, composting toilets and other eco-toilets, which basically intercept the nitrogen at the household level. We also have denitrifying septic components that are being evaluated. And so that looks at basically the upstream part of it. And then there's permeable reactive barriers, as you may know, that can be done along the edge that can then also capture or drive off the nitrogen before it enters the water. So in looking at this, we think about the shellfish component. And the idea, and what the shellfish do, as with inlet widening, is the shellfish go after all of it, because they're right in the estuary. Inlet widening opens the inlet, and we allow, and the water exchange then through dilution removes all of these components that are coming in because they're already in the water. And it's those two components that can work with that. Now what's interesting is that, you can go to the next slide, is that the flows coming into the pond are from several sources. And there's a lot of numbers here, but the main thing is that what's really interesting is that from the groundwater flow, the little stream flow coming in, and precipitation, there's almost a turnover of all the water in the pond once a month through the year. So there's a lot of material flowing and being diluted in Vineyard Sound from this. In addition to that, we have tidal activity, but the tidal activity is mostly in the lower reaches of the pond. So what happens, basically, the major problem we have is that during the warm months of the year, in particular, including some of the spring and fall months, we have a bloom of microbial life. And that microbial life bloom basically exceeds the carrying capacity and causes and starts to degrade, drops oxygen. We were getting fish kills, we're getting problems, but mainly during the summer months. Well, one of the things about the shellfish component is that that's when it would be active. So it would really be working at clearing the water, pulling out the nutrients at that point, and could contribute to an overall comprehensive plan to address the issue. So, so I think that this is the basic concept, and in thinking about the water flows and where the buildup is in the pond and when this is the major concept, the major idea behind the shellfish component. So I think I'll just leave it there. And also, yeah, in the summer, of course, as it warms up, not only does the microbial life bloom, but also the shellfish become much more active and grow fast and assimilate a lot of nitrogen. So I think that I'll leave it at that, just as a bit of an introduction, and then how we're going to address or in terms of the notice of intent, what the plan to do is. John Brawley will present that. Thank you.
Good evening, John.
Good evening, everyone. But Sia, did you want to have a few words?
Sure.
Okay, so I'll be right back.
I'm gonna have my back to somebody.
See, yeah, you have to go up and talk into the
I have to
microphone.
go talk into the microphone. Okay, sure.
Sia Karplus, Water Quality Management Committee Technical Liaison. Thanks for having us. Next slide. As a bit of background, the Falmouth is involved in a number of demonstration projects that were unanimously passed at town meeting in 2011. Article 17 appropriated money for these projects. We are moving swiftly and carefully through most of them, through all of them. And we have a comprehensive wastewater management plan that involves looking at these demonstration and alternatives as part of a big picture look at how we're going to clean up our 14 or 15 estuaries, depending on how you count them. Shellfish cultivation is what we're talking about today, but so that we have a context for all of the projects that we're looking at. We've got an inlet widening project, denitrifying septic systems, the eco toilets, a sewering project for Lower Little Pond, looking at permeable reactive barriers, and road runoff. So those are the projects that were approved on the town meeting floor in April 2011, and then a subsequent ballot vote by a 2-to-1 margin in every precinct, which I think is a very significant bipartisan acceptance of spending money to look at all these projects. And that's really why we're before you today, to talk about one of these important demonstration projects, the shellfish cultivation.
Can you go back one?
To that one?
Don't you mean in August of 2012? Does that say 12 or is that 13?
August 2013 is when the Board of Selectmen approved the draft comprehensive wastewater management plan. That was last summer.
2012.
I do mean 2012 because it's
So
not.
we're not at?
Yes, I
A little forward thinking there, huh?
do. One can only hope. We can dream a little bit. Yes. Thank you.
And I'm blind.
And I can't edit. So there we go. So the purpose of the research project, this is a research project. And the purpose of the project is to evaluate how shellfish may or may not contribute to nitrogen removal in the estuary in combination with other measures, or perhaps on its own. And if it is approved, this project, and if it is successful from a regulatory compliance perspective, from a logistics perspective, if it's deemed a successful project, other projects will have to come before the board separately. So this is a specific project that we're specifically looking to get some data from. We have goals for the first year and for the 3-year project. And the first year is to install a quantity of oysters that will give us a quantifiable change in water quality. So we're looking to detect a change from baseline conditions. And we're going to do this, we're going to talk in detail about how we're going to measure. But the goal of the first year is to say we've put in 1.25 million oysters early, 1.25 million oysters later in the season, and we've detected a change. And then there's a 3-year goal for the project, which over the monitoring period, we want to establish a causal relationship between the growth of the oysters and a removal of nitrogen. And that, according to Mass DEP, is going to take some years, 3 years of monitoring to understand if we can establish causality. So we have a 1-year goal, a 3-year goal. We are monitoring for a very specific purpose, and that is to establish TMDL compliance for shellfish. We want to get credit. From a regulatory perspective, we have to work with Mass DEP to make sure that what grows creates a change that gives us a credit from the comprehensive wastewater management planning perspective. We have been coordinating regularly with Mass DEP and SMAS to make sure that the kind of monitoring that we're doing is acceptable to them and makes sense to them, and that when we have results from this monitoring, those results will give us operable information. So we're looking for the kind of information from our monitoring that will allow us to make decisions and have credit for TMDL compliance. And Mass DEP has said that at minimum 3 years of monitoring is required. So that's why we're doing it. We're going to talk today about the project. We're going to talk about the location, where we're growing, where we're accessing. We're going to talk about the approach to how we're growing, and we're going to talk about the installation logistics, just so the board understands completely how this project is being implemented. And the other main piece of our presentation tonight is the monitoring plan. What have we decided? How have we decided it? Why do we feel that it's a reasonable approach for actually achieving those 1 and 3 year goals for TMDL compliance and establishing causality? And I believe I'm turning it over to John.
Okay, my name's John Brawley with Woods Hole Group. I'm a marine ecologist. I'm not an engineer, so we're going to look at some engineering plans. The purpose of this slide is to show what we're calling the staging area and the access point for the project. Is there a little pointer? I do. Okay. Okay, this is a view of Narragansett Street. This is the terminal end of Narragansett Street. This is Little Pond over here. Okay, this is a private property on both sides. There's an existing, the committee worked to look for an access point. There aren't any real public ramps or any boat ramps or anything in Little Pond. This was an area that was suggested by several people in town as a potential place. We went and checked it out. The project area is right here, so it's close to it. And it also has an existing area that looks like there's a minimal amount of salt marsh, and it looks like a place where previous studies of Little Pond, this was an existing access area. The red square here is an approximate area where, let me just tell you what the green arrow is, basically a point of access. This is vegetation right here, terrestrial vegetation over here too. And then you'll see some salt marsh along the fringing salt marsh down here. There's also a stormwater. This dashed line here is this underground pipe, and then there's an outflow pipe right here. That was, I believe, installed by the town, and I don't have I don't know what year that was. The idea of moving oysters from town-run upwellers in Falmouth Harbor to the site would be to bring pickup trucks with seed and put the seed shellfish in bags that would then be walked out here and put on floating lines. Okay. This is just another view of the area. This is an aerial photograph showing what the landscape looks like. And please ask any questions if I'm going too fast or skipping anything. This is a photograph from that red square looking towards Little Pond. This is an existing clearance through basically greenbrier patches over here, upland vegetation. And right down here is where the stormwater outflow pipe is. I've walked a bit closer here. This is the partially exposed pipe. Here's someone's piece of a fence. And then this vegetation on the side. There's a little bit of Spartina patens lining this area. And to the area left of this, as you'll see on the plan, on the map, there's a gap because this more woody vegetation overhangs into Little Pond and disrupts the Alchina flora. Okay, this is a parcel map. This is Little Pond. The green dot is the point of access that we were just looking at the end of Narragansett Street, and this is the planned 2-acre project area for the oyster grow out. You'll notice there's a little bit of buffer area on the sides. This was intended to show that the the oyster lines would be away from the existing shellfish resource that we went out and did a stock assessment in October or November. And most of the, I think I presented this last time, most of the shellfish are occurring along a thin band along the coastline. The sediments underneath the green polygon there are, for the most part, hypoxic or anoxic, and we didn't find any shellfish in the midsection of the pond in this area. Lots of organic matter. So the idea, the concept here is that shellfish will be grown in floating bags in Little Pond during the growing season, and a portion of the oysters, I should say, will be relayed for public through the public propagation program through DNR. And we've worked with Chuck Martinson and others in his department to and DMF to establish some potential relay areas. There are 2 in West Falmouth Harbor. We're going to go through them, so we could just cycle through them. This is Abbott's Point here. This is kind of a family beach area in West Falmouth Harbor. And these, when in the report and in these slides, I just want to make a clarification. This is all, where it says commercial, it's also recreational, not just commercial. But you'll notice there'll be boat access or foot access to these areas. The purpose of these relay areas is to put the oysters through what's called depuration. Little Pond is prohibited for shellfish harvest due to fecal coliform levels that exceed state standards. The state allows the transfer of shellfish from these prohibited areas, growing areas, to conditionally approved or approved areas such as West Falmouth Harbor, these areas, where for a period of 6 months they cleanse themselves out. And this is the idea is that it's bacteria. These are not metals. They're not toxins of other types. And then they can be harvested and eaten raw. This is a relay area proposed, 4 acres in Quistit Harbor. There's an existing oyster population here, a natural set. Okay. This is Great Pond. This is the east side of Great Pond. Along here, this would be boat access only, commercial and recreation. And this is over in Green Pond in the southwest area. These areas were delineated by the shellfish warden. Okay, this is a bit of a busy slide, but this is what we did was we went through we wanted to make this project most efficient. We can't grow oysters in Little Pond because of its classification as prohibited beyond market size, which is 3 inches. In essence, they have to be removed from Little Pond by law 6 months before they reach market size. So that's a DMF policy. DMF is Division of Marine Fisheries. So what we're proposing to do and what actual shellfish growers do, is we can get seed, which is 2 millimeter oysters in large numbers from approved hatcheries. They can be put in the town upweller system, which is an enclosed area, a screened in containment system where the small 2 millimeter oysters can have water flowing through them and they grow relatively quickly, and then they're transferred from there into these floating bags that we're talking about. So they start in May in the upweller and go through a series of bag turnovers, small mesh bags to contain them so they'll retain, transferred over at different densities to larger mesh bags, and then by the fall, this first round of seed that's purchased can be relayed out to those areas that I just showed for depuration at the end of the growing season. Meanwhile, in July, when the upweller here is empty, we can fill it back up with another set of what we're calling late seed. They're behind these guys. They end up getting to about 60 to 70 millimeters through the same process by the end of the summer. And they can either be relayed out, but what we'd like to do is keep them in the pond through the winter and have them grow another season in the following summer. The purpose of doing this piggyback is that you have a larger oyster will absorb more nitrogen more efficiently then smaller. So we're overlaying the system, the process. Next. Recap. We've been, the committee, everyone involved has been working in close communication with the Department of Natural Resources. A lot of meetings, a lot of emails, lots of discussion, a lot of field visits. The extent of work at Narragansett Street, we've showed you what we intend to do here. There will be some access to the project area by a small boat, probably a 14 to 16-foot John boat that would be accessed through the same area, either by hand if it's light or by small trailer. The permission to do this has been given by the property owners, and we have established a storm management plan, which is really, in case of a major hurricane, what steps would be taken to either safeguard vessels, gear, or remove them for safety. The storm management plan is also going to be, the town has a storm management plan or emergency management plan that will incorporate the entire town propagation program when it's revised this summer. This is the time that we anticipate mobilizing and then demobilizing the gear. It's essentially a couple of days to prepare some lines out there to hang the bags from. Right now we're envisioning 20 lines with 100 bags per line. These lines are simply just a cinder block with a line coming up to a buoy, and then from there there's about 40 or 50 feet to maybe another buoy with a cinder block under it to stabilize it, and then a terminal one. So probably 3 buoys, 3 cinder blocks along the way. They can be moved easily. If there's a storm, they can be pulled in when we change the gear over, change from small mesh to large mesh. These can be just towed right to shore with very little resistance. Well, with some resistance, but there'll be a couple of strong men working on these, I think. And then about 5 days to, it was a conservative estimate to get the oysters from the upweller system over in trucks, pitched into bags, and then moved out. Okay? There'll be some regular maintenance. Weekly, the bags will foul. Basically, algae or tunicates will grow on the gear, so there will be people that will go out and flip these bags. They will be temporary town employees. And when you flip them, you aerate them, and it kills the fouling organism. Then they're flipped back sequentially the next week. Okay. This is what it would look like. This is not Little Pond. This is, I believe this is an estuary in Maine. These lines are approximately 100 bags long. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is about 500 bags. They're pulling them over and connecting them over. Be about 4 times the size of that. This is a close-up of what the gear looks like. This is the mesh bag and a couple of flotation devices that are clipped on, and they have all these benefits here, and this is again what they look like. And they don't have to be doubled up, they could be single, they could be in a couple of different orientations. Okay, as Sia said, this is a research project. We already went over these goals here in another slide, so I won't reiterate them. Unless I'm missing something. No. But here's the goal, and here's what we expect. And these are estimates, and these are the amount of nitrogen that we'd expect to be removed, physically removed through tissue and shell growth. This is not including any kind of denitrification or other process or burial, which may occur. To what degree, we're not sure yet. We want to make sure that we're just sticking to what we know oysters can assimilate. These are the years. We have early seed and late seed, the numbers here. These projections don't include a late seed in 2014 yet, but may if the plans change. And this is the kilograms of nitrogen removed, and this is the seasonal percent of the seasonal nitrogen load to Little Pond, to the entire pond, And the seasonal means the growing season. It's basically May 1st through October 30th, I think. It's about half of the year. This is not concentration. This is not necessarily a direct correlation to concentration, or linear, I should say, but these are the magnitudes of the load. I'm not going to go through every number here because there are a lot of things, and you probably can't read them. But this is basically an exercise to look at it's a volumetric approach of looking at how much percent of the seasonal load can be removed. Was it seasonal load that you calculated, or in these?
It's the annual, that's the flux, it's the daily.
This is the daily flux.
It's the daily flux, it's percent of the daily flux that you would see on that day.
Right.
So it's comparing signal to background or noise to detectable change. And if you think about it, you're going to have a background level of nitrogen, and you're going to be removing some, and what's the percent you're going to be removing based on background level?
Based on the exposure.
Based on
The exposure. This is a first approximation of the amount of nitrogen in phytoplankton that the oysters would encounter on a daily basis, and then the amount of instantaneous removal is what these were calculated to be. Okay. So that's the kind of thing that we were thinking through when we planned this out. Okay, Little Pond has been historically monitored by the pond watchers, or the Pond Watch Group, and data has been collected and used by SMAST and incorporated into the MEP studies to develop the TMDLs for Little Pond and the other estuaries in town. For the data that were used for the TMDL were based on these monitoring areas, the red circles, there are 4 of them. And then what they're proposing to do, and what they did last year, was to increase the spatial resolution of monitoring in Little Pond, and also the temporal resolution. I'll show that to you in a minute, but this slide's the same thing. It's just putting the project area in context. And we have summary data of total nitrogen from 1997 to 2004 for those 4 stations, and we have run some analyses on the relationship between monitoring effort and detectable change. Okay, this is a busy slide too, but what this is showing is this is in a monitoring plan that's been submitted by SMAST to the town. This is the dates that they intend to go out and collect samples at these stations here. And there are the 4 original ones in here, plus these, the ones that have a decimal and another number here, are additional stations that they've proposed and that they did monitor last year. So the MEP report provides total nitrogen in a table in summary form. Currently, we didn't have access to the discrete, the monitoring data, the raw data. So based on, we took what we had for annual means reported for 1997 through 2004, and I think that you submitted this in the package. It's page 84 of the MEP report. There was enough information to at least do an analysis of what the probability of detecting a decrease in total nitrogen would be. And this could be important to DEP, but it's also important for the project to, there's a hypothesis that this or any other method of nitrogen removal is going to be detectable in the water quality. Now, total nitrogen is not the only thing that you can look at. There are subspecies of nitrogen. There are, ammonium and nitrate, which are probably more important to look at in terms of total nitrogen. I mean, instead of total nitrogen, because total nitrogen also includes refractory nitrogen. There's a lot of recycled material, a lot of material that's been eaten up and would be buried eventually that's not biologically available. But what is biologically available and important is the nitrate and ammonium, which are inorganic forms of nitrogen. And the nitrate is what's coming in from the groundwater. Ammonium is coming from recycling of organic material by the sediment, by the microbes that Ron explained. Here's a table. A statistician looked at the data, came up with the number of samples that are associated with a probability of detecting a 10% decline in the mean total nitrogen based on the SMAS data, and 15%. This is just an example. So, for example, if you were to if you wanted to have a probability of 95% that you can detect 15% change in the total nitrogen concentration, you need 70 samples. Okay? Not in 1 year. Okay, and I'm sure you'll have questions about this, and I can explain. These are the parameters that have been monitored over time since 1994, and that would continue to be monitored. I'm not going to go through them all, but if you have questions, we can talk about them. This is a summary of the storm management plan. Basically, these are the guts down here. And the way the plan is drafted right now, it has a timetable from 5 days from the risk of a storm down to the day of the storm before evacuation. We've identified some town-owned properties that could be used for short-term storage of gear in the event of a storm, and also for storage of gear in the winter that's not being used. Next. Oh, that's it.
Thank you. Let's have some lights.
Okay.
Jen?
Yes, Madam Chairman. One quick question. See, did you bring your green cards from your abutter notification? The green cards from the abutter notification.
I did not bring the green cards. You have green cards from the abutter notification.
Certified mail?
Yeah. Let me ask that a different way. Did you notify abutters?
Other than going to the abutters to the road and getting their permission to do the work.
No, we're talking about anybody within 100 feet of any of these activities.
The activities in the water or the activities for feeding it?
Activities in the water.
Activities in the water.
No. No, people don't notify.
Continue.
Well, first of all, I can tell you you're going to have to continue because you don't have a DEP number.
Yeah, there's no DEP numbers.
I have at least 2 pages of questions, which since you're here, I may as well go through those questions.
Yep. We may have to go through this again. I do have one question, John, about the relay site.
We shouldn't even ask. Yeah, we shouldn't even continue this hearing if the abutters haven't been. The abutters don't have a chance to hear any of these questions.
I'm understanding that right now, Madam Chairman.
Let me make a couple of comments. One is, I want to start out, I think it's important in this town to thank the people who have put a lot of effort into working on any of the projects, whether it be water quality people, people on the planning board, and so forth. And I know you've put a tremendous amount of effort into this. Second comment I want to make is, I know that people would like to sort of decrease the amount of money that has to be spent on sewering. But I know nobody in town wants to say this, but sewering is going to have to be done. Even if all of these demonstration projects worked completely, they're not going to solve all the problem. So the sooner people realize that, the better. I know people don't like to say that, but that's the truth. I will say, when you come back, and I've already mentioned this to John, there's no way you can convince me 70 samples would work until I have baseline data. And we know you don't have the baseline data because we already know that some of those months, no data were collected. And we also need to know what methods were used, where the stations were, how the timing of the samples were determined, and you know, you've done this kind of work, you've done
Right.
water quality work, and the information we've been given is totally insufficient for us, and certainly for you, to determine what the baseline data are. So, we're gonna have to continue this, but just realize that.
And one comment on that is, I agree, it's very important to be able to understand how to monitor, to detect the change in water quality.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
Steve
gonna-
gave a very good introduction. This is supposed to be a demonstration project.
Right.
This is what we want to be able to do the first year, this is what we want to be able to do by the third year. And if we don't know, we don't have any baseline, we can't do that.
And the baseline data will be important for anything in Little Pond, whether it's sewering or permeable reactive barriers. It's
Yeah,
going to be important. Just want to, I don't want this project shouldn't be singled out as
No, I'm
That's being
not
from poor
singling
data.
this out, but, I mean, you happen to be here tonight.
Right.
But yeah. And I just want to emphasize, as I'm sure you would if you were designing the program, that temporal, including tidal, daily, seasonal fluctuations need to be accounted for.
Right. And that information can also be used with the data when they are available to basically modify that analysis so it can actually improve the number or decrease the number of samples with more information. Right.
Absolutely.
So
Right. But it has to be,
we need to,
we have to ask the right question, and we have to design the sampling scheme.
Yep.
And we have not been given that information yet. Oh. Oh, okay. Well, what about the other neighbors that are within 100 feet of the state?
The two on either side have already been notified and given consent. So just start, let me go downstairs and check
All right.
something, okay?
So we're checking about a butter notification, so we're going to continue until, because they changed the
They
rules.
changed the
And we have to make
notification
sure,
requirements on the water.
we have to make sure we have the right requirements.
But just continue to go on, I'll be right back. I just have one quick question I want to ask Barbie. John, on the relay areas, will the relay areas be closed once the shellfish are placed there?
Yes.
I'm assuming they will be.
yes, and there's also
I just want to clarify
an
that.
enforcement plan to assure, we've worked with Division Marine Fisheries to,
One of my questions too.
to ensure that, that illegal poaching or taking of shellfish during the depuration period of that 6 months, or earlier, depending on, it's DMF's discretion, will be taken up by the town enforcement.
Okay. Okay, I have a bunch of questions, but I'm sure all
Yeah, I
of you
just
have
wanted to
questions
follow on
too.
on that. So, I mean, normally those shellfish beds are closed anyway seasonally.
Right.
So is the intent to mesh the normal closure with when you're relaying them, so they, by the time you would normally reopen them, they're ready to go?
I believe that's the intent, and that's really a question that the shellfish constable in town, basically, it's up to that department's discretion to determine which relay sites are most appropriate for location and for public access. We discussed this. Chuck Martinson wants to time these relays such that they are consistent with the existing open and close periods.
It'd be a shame to shut down all those areas to shellfishing.
Right. And those are large areas. They could be 1 acre out of 6 would be closed off. They'll have to be creative.
I have a lot of other questions, but I think given what we're having to deal with, I'll hold my fire.
Okay, does anybody want to?
I'll just hit on one point. I think I guess with Sia's presentation, I think, indicated that the goal in year 3 might be to achieve as much as a 26% reduction of the seasonal load of nitrogen, if I heard correctly. And that suggests to me that if the research project here was successful, then it might be possible to scale this up by a factor of 4 and get to, it's an oversimplification, to get to 100%.
We'll actually talk about, you didn't hear the pre-presentation we heard, I don't think, but we'll get to that point.
No questions at this point. I know you have a big list, so there's not.
You want to ask any?
That was the point.
No.
Well, I'll start with a question, since we're waiting for Jen. And actually, I could ask the two people sitting in the back of the room there. Maybe you would like to, maybe Steve, you're vice chair? Maybe you'd like to come up and answer this.
I'm going to try.
You probably won't like it. That's why I said my thank you first. I'm trying to get everybody in the town into the mode for appreciating what volunteers do. And
I
then-
am Steve Rafferty. I
and
am
then-
the Vice Chair of the Water Quality Committee. So
And then providing guidance if we don't agree with everything that you did, so we can make a better product at the end. So my first question is rather blunt, but I think you can deal with it. I know Virginia could, I'm sure you can. And that's, where does the buck stop? Who's in charge of this project?
Chuck Martinson, the project will be done under the auspice of Chuck Martinson because under the Division of Marine Fishery rules, it has to be done under him because it's a town-run project. It's not an open project, so it actually will reside under Chuck Martinson.
So if something happens, bad happens, we call Chuck.
You would call Chuck, or there's going to be some seasonal help working on it that will be designated. So that's where it would start. We will be, any of us that are working on this project will be going through Chuck.
Okay, because you realize if we issue an order of conditions and any of those conditions are violated, someone's responsible. So
I believe
you're
that's
saying
true.
it's
I believe
Chuck?
that's true for anybody who issue an order of conditions too, right?
It is true. It's
Yeah.
true of anyone. But I'd like to know where the buck stops.
Yep.
And does Chuck know that that's where the buck stops if there's a problem with this?
When we started way back at the beginning, Chuck was very clear that he is the person in charge of these resources in town, and that through the Division of Marine Fisheries, when we did the demonstration project last year for the 3 bags that we got approval on, that was under Chuck as well.
Okay, well, I'm a little disappointed then that Chuck isn't here at this meeting.
Oversight on our part.
Okay, to get to your question, Ed, we were given a presentation in November. Now I'll go to John. And at that presentation, you had some estimations. And what you said was if you put 10 million seed oysters, it could remove 20% of the TMDL. Do you remember that presentation? And then Courtney asked the question, well, how could we remove them all? And I said, well, you'd have to grow them in people's front yards. Do you remember that?
Not specifically, but I remember being here that night and talking about this.
Do you remember saying 10 million?
I said whatever was in that presentation, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I had a graph that went up to 10 million from, I think, 500,000 to 10 million.
Right, and the 10
showing
million
the
would
curves.
remove 20%.
Right, and that showed not just nitrogen assimilation into tissue and shell, but also estimates of the potential for denitrification as well.
Okay. So you're going to grow, at any one time in the pond, you're going to have 2.5 million. No, is that right? 1.2, yeah, 2.5 million
In this project.
in this project.
For some of the time in the pond, yes.
Yeah.
Overlapping at different sizes.
Right, which means that it's not sort of the maximum amount that's going to be taken out, but 2.5 million.
Yeah.
So if we were to go back to your graph, 20% for 10 million, and we're talking about a quarter of 10 million, are we talking about 5%?
No, the conditions are different. So that graph, like again, was showing a single size going in May, growing out to the end of the year, and then being removed from Little Pond that whole crop.
Yep.
These numbers.
I understand what you're doing.
Right, so that's why there's a difference in that. There's a difference in the timing. And,
So what percent are you saying is going to be taken out?
percent of what?
TMDL.
TMDL is based on an annual load, and these have been changed to a seasonal load, which is it's not as much as the annual load.
All right, let me ask this a different way. What change if we had a figure, which we don't, for a water quality figure, an elusive water quality figure, if we did, what percent reduction would you expect to see?
If we had water quality data that we don't have, what percent would,
Yeah, how is
of-
this going to improve water quality? By what percent?
Well,
What is it that we're trying to determine at the end of this project? What's our goal?
the goals were to detect a change in water quality with this experiment.
How much of a change is my question.
The change that has to be seen. We need to have data to compare historical numbers, the historical numbers to compare what will be monitored during the project. If we knew the number, we wouldn't do the project necessarily. I mean, I can't tell you exactly what the total nitrogen concentration will be without running an experiment, and every site's different.
Well, I know that.
But we do know those numbers are
I have a
actual.
bunch of graphs here to show you how these water quality parameters change on a daily basis, which I'm sure you know. I'm sure you've done hourly samples over a period of days in estuaries like this, and you get oxygen going from 25% to 180%.
Right.
You get nitrogen going from, what, 1 microgram up to,
Yeah, there's a lot of natural variability in estuaries.
yeah, which you have to understand what the natural variability in this estuary is before you can design how you're going to detect the change.
And that's
That's my
true with the
purpose.
TMDL analysis, and the original TMDL analysis too. Yeah, that has to be understood.
But I don't see the data showing me what that natural variability is.
Right.
You don't see it either.
I've not been given any raw data for the system.
Yeah, well, that's a
That's, I
problem.
mean, but I believe that's a town question.
If I can, there is a little bit of confusion going on. At one point, as this project was being envisioned and developing, we were working in a very more simplified view of things, i.e., there's known information about how much nitrogen oysters take up, and people said, well, if there's so many pounds of nitrogen to take up, how many acres does it take? And we're working in that sort of simplified model. Your questions as to the water quality really go to the heart of what we are trying to get to. And if there are suggestions as to how to go about doing that, we would welcome them. We moved to a point of what we had in terms of an overall budget for this. And the budget that was built for this was not constructed to go in and completely clean up all of Little Pond by putting in the theoretical, help me out here, Ron, whatever, there are 14 acres or something, okay? We said, let's work our way, and this has been an ongoing discussion about what we have from SMAS for data and what the data sets look like. And I'm not an expert in the science stuff, but Virginia might be able to help at some point, because we made a couple requests there for it. And we determined at one point, we thought we were missing some data sets. We just determined they had gathered data but hadn't analyzed, and we've asked for that analysis to be done, and we are still waiting for it to come in. But they did take more samples last summer.
But they didn't take them at the frequency that they said they would take them.
There are some issues with what they did, I agree, okay? I could stand here and not argue, but identify that SMAS doesn't always do what they've been asked to do, or sometimes they do things that they haven't been asked to do.
I understand
But
this is a
the
problem.
point I'm trying to get to is that
I love experiments.
No,
I would love to see this experiment work, but it can't work unless there's a properly
Okay. so-
designed before and after.
So I hear your suggestion that we do not do this, that we spend some time building up a proper data set of existing conditions.
Yeah, and
So-
I'd be happy to talk.
So how
To
many
John.
years do we need to gather the data, would you guess?
I think you could do a valid experiment if you collected good data this summer. Then next summer, you could put oysters in there, and I think you could get, we might not get as good information as we would want, but I think you could get detectable information. But not unless we know in that Mass Estuaries report, maybe those bi-monthly samples taken by pond watchers is enough to build a model to figure out the TMDLs. I mean, I haven't gone into that, and I certainly haven't seen any of the raw data as you haven't. Maybe it's enough to do the TMDL, but it is not enough to answer the question you're asking. This is the most important thing in science, is what's your question? Then you have to say, what kind of experiment do I have to design to answer that question?
And the question is,
And I'm happy to work with John and work with some of my colleagues at HUI who I've talked to about this to help design something. The data could be collected this summer so that next summer you could do this experiment.
Can I say one thing? Yeah, if you go back or forward, perhaps, the graph that we were talking about, the numbers of samples. I mean, we don't have to look at it in detail again, but I want you to know that this was a real test. There was a null hypothesis. There was a hypothesis that there will not be detectable change of 10% of the mean of total nitrogen based on the data that we were provided some data. Okay, it's actually done by one of your colleagues, and this was an actual test. So it's not complete. The hypotheses would then be, a testable hypothesis would be total nitrogen, ammonium, a separate test for ammonium, a separate for nitrate, light extinction coefficient, the clarity of the water, chlorophyll concentration. Those things would be testable, okay? The important thing that we have to understand that these numbers are based on 8 years of maybe inconsistent in terms of some of the years in timing, but the data that we were given were, here are the means for these 8 years, and here's the standard deviation. Okay,
Yeah.
and you've looked at them. I know you have. Okay.
I did, I graphed them out.
But
I did something different with them.
But this is right. So this is the approach right here. These are the results of the approach. Okay, the probabilities of detecting detecting a decrease of 10% and 15% as an example. So.
But I think it's critical for you to have an instrument near this experiment, or near where you're going to have the experiment, and at another site to be taking, hourly oxygen. I mean,
Sure.
You guys have a big budget for this. Just buy a couple of these probes and have some good water quality data that, that you can follow up with some samples taken when you know what the variability is going to be.
Right. And there is a proposed monitoring plan that is consistent enough with the historical data collection that would allow us to have a basis for comparison. But having continuous data loggers in there as well.
Well, I think that's absolutely critical, especially because, to get to the point that Ron brought up, there isn't much flow in this pond. This pond has the pond we worked at, the Little Sippawisset Marsh system, where I have some of those data to show, which I have in this packet, to show, how much these vary in a daily cycle. Where was I going with this?
More flow.
Oh, more flow. That system, where your pond turns over more frequently than once a day. This system, the tidal flushing, is 4.5 days at the mouth. That means where you're working, it's probably in the terms of 1 to 2 weeks. So I would suggest, if you're gonna have a dense amount of, where your oyster farms are, and where the oyster grants we have in town, all have systems that tides or water's moving in and out. You're gonna have a dense collection of oysters with virtually no flow. So you're gonna wanna know, oxygen, ammonia, temperature.
Right.
On a, very
Right, the more information.
taken very frequently.
And one point, again, to make, one thing to really, there is a high level of certainty around the numbers in mass, Those magnitudes of how many kilograms would be removed over a certain period of time, that's an important number, because the TMDLs also deal with a mass input to these estuaries. These are actual numbers that you can measure. At the end of the growing season, you take the bags out, you could take 1,000 oysters and take the mean of that, and you have high certainty of how much actual nitrogen you're removing in that period of time from that bay, and that's very valuable.
Yep.
That's going to be something that I think DEP will.
And I have no doubt you could do that right now.
Right, and it has been done.
But if the goal of this project is to see if it's affecting water quality, then we need to.
Right, and we're doing the best we can with the information we have.
Can I make a couple, I'd like to make a couple of points. Realizing pretty early on that we weren't going to have the full complement of background data, that would have been nice to look at to understand the standard deviation over the measurements that we would have. So we would say, okay, can you detect a change at one sampling station at this point in time over different years? I mean, it would have been great to see what the standard deviation was, because then you could say, if we're changing that point by 10%, is it a reasonable thing to say we're going to see it over the noise, over that variability in the values? We knew that pretty early on we weren't going to have it, to design the first year of what is going to be a 3-year experiment, according to Mass DEP. We started looking at other reasonable and sensible ways to understand water quality and detecting changes in water quality. And I did a sort of a desktop analysis. I talked about it with other, people who are involved in the project, Woods Hole Group. And there are sort of 2 points that I'd like to make. One is that the monitoring plan and the data that we're collecting need to be approved by Mass DEP. Mass DEP is presently reviewing the monitoring protocol that SMAS proposed, the frequency of that monitoring, the locations of those stations, and they are preliminarily comfortable with, if you put the shellfish you put the oysters in this season and you measure them the way you're talking about, you ought to be able to get temporal and spatial changes. So Mass DEP is actually vetting our plan as well.
They might be comfortable, but I'm not.
Okay, well, I think it's important to understand that we haven't been having these thought conversations outside of understanding what the regulators at the state level think are important. So that was just one point I thought was important to make. So everybody understood that this is a 3-year plan. We're looking at the first year, and we're looking at what we could possibly detect in an effort to then adjust in the second and third years. We want a year of seeing what happens so that we can see how to adjust in the next years. So that's one thing. And the other is I think this is a very important table to understand. I know it's busy, I know there's a lot to it, but I'd like to spend a minute explaining what it means.
And we weren't given this on our.
It is actually in your packet. In fact, there's a 2-page, it's a memo, I sent it. I'm hoping you got it.
I did not get this in my packet. But go on.
The actual modeling that was done to get to that flux number, the explanation of it and the assumptions that I used were actually in a 2-page memorandum that I am pretty sure got included, but I'm happy to, tomorrow morning, first thing, I'll make sure that you have at least the methodology so you understand. But what this says is there is a volume of water in the estuary. There's also a volume of water that you can calculate with, geometry in the area that we're talking about putting shellfish. And if you take the tidal flux, because there is some, and you adjust that volume for a change from the top to the bottom, and you look at the Sentinel station, which is the LP2, kilograms per, or milligrams per liter, you can determine how much actual nitrogen you would expect to see in the water where the shellfish are. And we can talk about the assumptions that went into that modeling, but I think they're reasonable, and we can adjust them to change that number if we want. And then if what we look at over the course of the season, from the size at the start and the size at the finish, I assumed the 6.4 millimeter seed. I have these tables for bigger seed, smaller seed, because it matters significantly the size of the seed, obviously, because the bigger the seed, the bigger the shellfish, the more nitrogen it's attenuated. So if you look at this, you see that and you take 1 million seed just to start out, and you see you've only got a little bit of a change. I'm gonna go, I don't have a pointer. Look at that column. If you start at the beginning, you see that you've got the seed and they're small and they're not changing very much. But by the end of the season, if you've got 1 million seed, you've got about a 12% change. And if you believe that you've got about a 10% standard error in the MEP numbers.
Well, I don't know because I didn't see any of that.
Well, if you look at the averages.
Deviation. But we don't know what we don't know the standard deviation.
Right.
Of what we were given the average of the averages.
Sure.
So we don't know the standard deviation of each average.
Of each number. But you do know that you're making, and so what we're doing is we have a hypothesis. We believe, because we actually don't have 1 million, we have 2 million, which is an 18% change, that we're going to be able to see that. And that is our hypothesis. That is what John and I have spent a number of weeks laboring over. Do we think that that is a reasonable hypothesis? We will see a change because we believe that at the end of the season, we will have changed things between 12 and 18% over background. And that is what this means and why we feel that this first year of experimentation is a reasonable experimental protocol. And I just wanted to share that.
Just so we understand the data, this is nitrogen removal in water or in the fish, the plant?
Just from the oysters and the shell. From the
This is
meat and
this
shell.
change. This change is the title is nitrogen removal.
Yes.
Is it nitrogen in the water column?
Yes.
What did you find out?
I want to address you raise actually incredibly valid points that our committee has been wrestling with for quite a while, which is how good is the data that we've got? And how do we build a program to measure a change? We've relied upon the Woods Hole group to help put that together. Sia has been our technical assistants reviewing what they're doing. You mentioned that both yourself and others at Woods Hole or whatever would be able to help us. What I'm hearing you say is that we need another level of input from somebody or somebodies to look at what we've stated that we think we have for baseline data, the usefulness of that baseline data, and the extent to which the program we've built and the sampling program we would like to do is going to give us measurable results. They're extremely valuable questions. We do not have an infinite supply of money, so we've been also as a committee trying to work within the money that we have available for a period of time as we have several demonstration projects. Now, we can obviously reallocate money if necessary. So I'm reaching out to you here a little bit, which would be how do we go, or any recommendation you might have of do we go to Woods Hole and start asking a different person? We passed the DP, which we can all take our own opinions about how thorough the DP is going to be in looking at it. We've had some SMAS input on the sampling program, but we are relying upon a particular group so far to get us to here, and you have some serious reservations. do you have a recommendation for who we should bring in to look over our plan?
I can ask a couple of colleagues.
That would be excellent.
Who work on these systems.
Yep.
One is a statistician who works on time series analyses.
Yep.
And I think if we saw, I mean, certainly, I just, not to put you on the spot, John, but I'm going to quote from something John said. I say the proposal by Dr. Howes for water quality monitoring at Little Pond Estuary suggests comparing pre-2012 with post-2013 data, and I also say that will answer some questions that I think are critical to answer. But he didn't even collect the entire data set, and he only collected 2 months of data, and he said he would be collecting like a 6-month data period. All right, see Woods Hole Group Propagation Demonstration Project. This is John's memo. We've reviewed the SMAS proposal. This is for, I mean, this, you've had this.
Mm-hmm.
And the very limited data available on the Long Pond monitoring to begin to establish ... Then he goes on, the proposal does not clearly state the basis on which the sampling stations and the sampling frequency are based. Recommendation 1, consider incorporating water quality objectives to provide a quantitative basis. And I have in capital letters, this is a good recommendation. The questions posed on page 31 of John's memo need to address in particular, we need to be confident we can answer, 1, do water qualities change the water quality parameters in Little Pond? And as John said, it's not just for this project, it's for any project. Any project that we're doing, can we say with confidence that we're improving the water quality?
Right, right.
And the second is, and this is something you did get at, but I started thinking about, how do the oysters themselves affect the water quality parameters in the waters adjacent to them? Not just in the pond as a whole, but these are animals. What? Keep going? Oh, you want more lights? Okay. These are animals.
Right.
And yes, they take in phytoplankton. Yes, they take in particulate organic matter. They probably convert, an average ecological conversion is 10% of what they take in. And then what happens to the rest? Well, nitrogenous wastes are given off as ammonia. Pseudofeces are dropped to the bottom.
Yeah.
And so how does that affect?
Exactly. I mean, this is back to, the DEP has said in the past, oysters may be taking up nitrogen as they grow, but we don't have any way of telling what they do to water quality. So we are trying to build an experiment that will measure that. So if all these variables are in there, so you're right, we'll take all the guidance and help we can get here.
I mean, we all like oysters. We all love to see oysters grow. We love to eat oysters. But everyone knows with aquaculture projects, in particular when you have animals crowded together, there can be some detrimental effects. And you asked a question the last time we had this project. You asked John, well, this is great if we have a bumper crop, but what can go wrong? Disease is a problem. A low oxygen event. We already know we have fish kills in this area. What if we get a low oxygen event with 250,000 oysters there?
Close up for a while.
They close up, but what if it lasts for? Yeah.
One of the, I mean, I don't think we are at all trying to take the position that growing oysters or other shellfish is in and of itself a solution for any one of the estuaries. For Little Pond, if we were to sewer the entire area around Little Pond, and we are coming before town meeting this year for a request for financing to do the engineering work on that. We've done preliminary work, we've got numbers. if we get that all built and we build all those sewers all the way around Little Pond, we still will have to remove more nitrogen from the system to meet the TMDL.
Yeah, I'm not saying.
No, I'm just putting that
All
out there. So, I mean, that maybe there was, I wasn't looking at you specifically. It was more so people understand, part of the reason why do we choose Little Pond and how are we trying to structure this experiment. Number one, we think it's an easier place to measure some of these water, be able to do the measurement up and down. If somebody says that we've got a false assumption on that and it's better to be in a different water body, then we will have to take that information in and reconsider what we're doing. So up till now, we've been, as a committee, trying to wrestle through, the statistics, the number of oysters, the number of stations, the available background data. We recognize there is some lack of completeness to what we're doing. If it's flawed and there's a way to make it better, that would be great to know. If it's fatally flawed, we don't want to waste the town's money, and we'll pull the plug on the whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay? So that we can all work together to get to a better understanding of what we need to sample and how to sample it. I'm all for it.
Right. I just want to make sure that changes in water quality, and I hope that some of these demonstration projects show some improvement in water quality. I just want to make sure that they can be detected. And there are ways to do it, but there's sophisticated sampling schemes and sophisticated statistics that are needed to analyze these. It's not sort of by the seat of your pants.
I will take a little bit of umbrage at the use of the phrase "seat of the pants," because we, as a committee, have been relying upon gathering information from the people we thought were able to look at what was out there. The Woods Hole Group's, feedback. John talks from the oyster side, but the Woods Hole Group helped out with some of the statistics.
John did give you a good evaluation of the monitoring plan that was given to you, and
So you're strong.
As politely as he could, he said, "I don't have enough to evaluate whether this is a plan that would work."
And what I'm hearing you say, and I asked this question directly before, is we should not put any oysters in this year because we lack sufficient baseline data to determine anything. That's what I heard you sort of, that's what I've been hearing you sort of imply.
Well, that's how I feel.
I'd like, and you might be right. I'd like to find somebody that can take a look and decide if, your review of this and your understanding and your suggestion to us is in fact a consensus from 2 or 3 people, in which case we'll get that in front of the Water Quality Management Committee, and that will inform a very clear decision on our part that we're not going to waste money.
What do you want me to ask some friends?
Yeah.
To review the plan that John reviewed? I mean, that's the plan we
Yeah,
have.
I mean, if the scientific community comes back and tells us that we should not be doing this, we should not be doing this. Okay, if we don't.
Well, we're not saying, and.
I'm not saying that you're saying that, but.
No, well, I'm saying, if I reviewed it right now, I'd say you shouldn't be doing it this year. You should design a plan where you can actually detect a difference. And you could do that this year. So I will take that. Jen will make a couple of copies for me, and I will take it to some of my colleagues.
Appreciate it.
And I will have them evaluate that plan. But then the next step is to design something so we can get the information this year so that you can try the experiment next year.
Mm-hmm.
But, as John said, it's not just for this project. For any of these projects, you're going to have to be able to show a measurable difference. And as Sia said, you're going to have to, if you want TMDL credits, you're going to have to be able to show the data. I mean, with oysters, it's a little bit easier because you can say it's taken X amount of nitrogen out because you remove them from the whole system. But some of these others,
This has been a very interesting exchange. I'm a generalist, as I've said before, and this is a very important thing. Water quality and improving water quality, dealing with the issues that we have in this town is extremely important. And I think that this particular study that you guys are undertaking, and everybody understands that oysters aren't the be-all to end-all. They're one part of it, they're possibly one part of the solution. But it would be, and this is a follow-on to what Betsy's saying, it would be a damn shame to invest the energy and the time and the money into putting this through, and then not be able to come up with data that really is definitive and beyond reproach. And I think that what I'm hearing Betsy saying is that you've got to have adequate baseline data specific to that particular part of the world where you're going to put these critters, so that you've got an unimpeachable conclusion at the other end that yes, in fact, X number of oysters in this area for that amount of time led to this amount of improvement. And if you have a situation where the data that you have is to start with is questionable, then you've got a problem, because it calls into question the validity of everything that goes on after that. So if you're going to build a house, you've got to have a good foundation.
I mean, it may be that the data themselves are fine. I mean, it was something somebody measured at a given time, but it may not be the information that we need to say how much of a change is taking place.
Yeah.
Which is what we want.
I mean, I think we're all on the, even though, we're, particularly Betsy's jumping on your case as a good academic should, the fact of the matter remains that we're all on the same page. We're both interested in the same result, that we want to see improvements, and we want to make sure that this possible part of the puzzle as a solution is a valid one.
Yeah. I know that, yeah.
I mean, for a lot of reasons. I mean, it's not just the improvement of water quality, but I mean, I think this has a lot of implications for aquaculture projects and all kinds of different things that we're doing in these estuaries that we want to know what the result is, good and bad.
Ron?
I think I'd like to clarify one thing that may be, it's a small thing, but it may turn out to be a bigger thing in terms of what we're talking about right now. When John gave the presentation and talked about 10 million oysters doing X, that was starting with 2 millimeter seed, basically at the beginning of the year. Mm-hmm. The design was changed since our last meeting. Mm-hmm. And what's happened now is that we have the first year growing small seed up to 60 millimeters or something, or 50, I think. 50, oh, whatever. It gets small, yeah. They're relatively small. And then the big change was that we would keep those animals, the second batch basically, in Little Pond for the next season. So what happens with all growth basically is that as things grow, when they're small, the relative growth rate is high and declines, but the absolute growth rate increases. Mm-hmm. And so your uptake goes up geometrically, if not exponentially, over that time. So we could possibly modify what we're doing this summer and have one batch of seed only. And the impact of that batch of seed on water quality this year would be minimal. And therefore, we could use that combined with the previous data to say, in a sense, we've got kind of like baseline. And then in 2014, those larger seed will be going in and, if everything goes as we envision, and gobbling up a lot. And that should show a clearly strong reference to this year's data in terms of the change, or the reference point would be this year. So that, your point is good, and I think that there's a way to work with this. So we could have minimal impact this year because of small seed growing to be big seed for 2014. And then we'd see, if we see anything, that's when we'd be starting a new batch of seed plus the big seed going in, and that's where the big impact would be. So it's a way then to look at the data we can get from last few years. Look at that. Look at this year's data, reference to that, considering that the impact of what we're doing is small. And at the same time, the reference data that you were talking about is really critical. And I think that, and one thinking is that the data that will be collected in the other estuaries. So let's say we have a big rainfall event or a big storm, we get a foot of rain or something in a day or two, and suddenly there's a big flushing. Well, we can look at the, like Great Pond and others. Won't be exactly the same, but we'll get an indication of what changes may have occurred that that may be external to the experiment itself.
Well,
so I think that
yeah, I mean, that's another problem. These are those 4 stations plotted over 8 years where I took 100%, the 100% is the highest you ever got, and then what the other years are, but there's no pattern in this. It's not like there was, I mean, here the last 2 years they did it, your head station was pretty good. It was pretty low. So these vary all over.
Right,
well, we don't know. We don't know what it is, what those external factors are that's causing the variability at these different stations, which we actually don't know what the variability of the stations is because all we have is an average.
Right. Well, I'm just exact. So,
but I see.
You see what I'm trying to say is that I think there's a way to work with this and turn it into possibly modify the design. But the critical thing is that the real bang for the buck, so to speak, is going to come in the second year, and possibly the third year as adjustments are made. But the second year we'll see it, and I think that's a way of proceeding. I think that we. That's what I envisioned anyway. I expect that it wouldn't be. So in a way, we'd be getting almost like baseline data this year, complemented by what we can get from the past, recent past, and then move ahead with the other. And I think as I don't know who said it, but the mass of animals is going to tell us something about nitrogen removal, basically.
Yeah.
So that's another.
We all know you can.
Yeah.
You can say what the the amount of nitrogen per animal of a given size is.
Right.
I mean, you have that from.
Yeah. And I think, so I think that this is the case for any of these options that the town is looking at. That we'll have to, it's all going to be looked at, how much nitrogen are we taking out? How much is coming from the households or whatever, or from the runoff and all this thing, and that's going to be.
But I think John's point is key.
Yeah.
That for any of these demonstration projects, you need to have a good understanding of what the spatial and temporal differences in those ponds are.
Right.
And we really don't have that.
But I think we can get it this year with a minimal impact approach that really builds to next year. In other words, we're laying the groundwork, we're preparing the seed for the second
I'm not
year.
going to agree with you completely. I'm going to look at SIA's graphs when we get them.
Okay.
But I have some other
Can I just say
concerns.
one quick thing to follow up on that? Maybe this would be a good time to, well, I think you've already stated it, that the Water Quality Committee should be looking at the other ponds that they are looking at demonstration projects at for inlet widening, permeable reactive barriers, and the other different demonstration actions that they would like to take, and take this opportunity to start collecting the water quality data now that's going to be necessary for them to be able to measure the differences once those demonstration projects go on.
Mark?
That's just following up on that.
You have to come up, Mark.
I have a couple comments.
Yeah, but you have to come up, Mark.
I can talk to you, I guess.
No, you can't.
No,
Talk
you
from here.
actually can't, Mark, sorry.
It's the TV.
And you have to tell us who you are, even though we know who you are.
I'm Mark
These
Grady.
people
I'm
don't.
on the Mashpee Conservation Commission and on the Sewer Commission. Our Sewer Commission is the equivalent of your Water Quality Board or whatever you call it. We've been looking at oysters too. I'd just like to make some observations. First of all, we're all struggling with dealing with MEP's analysis of where this nitrogen is coming from and how it's getting into the water.
into our estuaries. And we have to live with what we have, which is the best modeling we've got. It was reviewed by the Cape Cod Commission. They said, yeah, it looks pretty good. A number of outside consultants said it looks okay, as well as we can do. There are obviously a lot of uncertainties in the modeling, which unfortunately they're temporal uncertainties as well as magnitude uncertainties. The temporal uncertainties are sort of a problem because the input that's coming into the bay this year was generated 5, 10, and 15 years ago. So if you try to do a 1 point today's analysis of how much nitrogen is in the bay and then say it's going to be the same next year, well, it's not. So trying to do a year-by-year comparison to even understand how well we're doing with nitrogen removal from oysters, well, it's just not going to be good enough. Because next year you're going to try to compare this year's data with next year's data. Next year's data isn't going to be the same baseline anymore, because the baseline is going to be shifting along with the final results because you sucked out some nitrogen by your oysters. So you're in a tough to do it analytically. We're not dealing with a repeatable system like I'm a physicist, most physicists like to have. The same thing next year as this year and everything works fine. Well, that's not going to happen. I think my perception, and I think the perception we're carrying through at Mashpee, is that we've got as good an idea as we can get of what nitrogen is coming in to the various bays. And I think from the results our shellfish man has created, we've got a pretty good idea how much nitrogen is coming out when you take these oysters out. And we say like Hamlin Pond or Jehu Pond, we've got a certain amount of input. We've got to deal with so many kilograms of nitrogen. We'll know how much nitrogen we're getting out. I think the real pragmatic question is, which I think you brought up, is are we going to be able to grow 15 million oysters? Or are they going to have some interactions amongst themselves all crammed together, which may cause them to die out instantly because of disease? Or maybe they don't grow as well when they're that many close together. And I don't think anybody can tell you the answer to that without trying it. And I think you just got to go ahead and try it. I would be way against waiting another year to try to get better baseline data, because I think the baseline data is just not going to be good enough to use as baseline the following year. So I personally would be strongly supportive of this sort of thing. We are proceeding with a similar sort of project, not quite as rigorous as yours. We're perhaps a year behind, but I think just seeing if the oysters will grow well in this kind of dense area, and seeing if actually calibrating how much more nitrogen is coming out is a very worthwhile thing. So that's all.
I would like to request.
Oh, you haven't, I haven't finished my
Oh,
questions yet.
oh, okay.
We're
Oh,
only on question 2.
okay, sorry. I'll have to get another piece of paper to take
No, she
notes.
said go on.
Yes, go
I
on.
asked her.
Go on.
She said
We're
just
this
go on.
far and go on.
John, you probably answered this question. And this, well, it's what resources, other resources will be impacted by this project? How will the anchoring bags affect the muck bottom? Have you tried floating bags on concrete blocks?
Yes.
And it works?
It's a standard industry practice.
In this pond?
I have not
In the
put a
muck
cement
that's in the
block.
bottom?
I haven't set up a farm in this pond, no. I've walked in it. Oh, yeah, I wasn't part of it. Apparently last year there were cinder block systems very similar to this.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
You did give a survey of shellfish. Do you anticipate this will have any effect on finfish?
Growing oysters?
Project, yeah.
I don't anticipate any effect on finfish. That's not based on any finfish survey I've done.
Okay. I mean, obviously,
But based
the
on my
finfish
experience,
there because there was your experience where there's a lot of flushing.
right.
Based on
And I
your
know other
experience.
people's farms too in other systems.
Right.
I mean, in my opinion, the added structure there may benefit some species of finfish just because its habitat and structure. And
Just like an
and
artificial reef?
it will attract food, yes, exactly.
What survey data are available for us to assess the impact on the relay areas? Normally, if somebody wants any kind of aquaculture project, they go to this is the procedure, you go to the Board of Selectmen to give a license, but I guess this is a town project, we don't have to do that. But that triggers that Fish and Wildlife will do a survey of the areas.
Division of Marine Fisheries.
Yeah.
That's typical in private aquaculture licensing. There'd be a survey. It's my understanding that the town already has a well-run public shellfish propagation program where there
But
are
not for oysters in these ponds. We've never,
for other shellfish,
Right.
for hard shell.
right, but I would
clams.
like to know what's in these areas where you plan to put oysters.
Right, and that's, I can't answer that. I haven't surveyed the other areas. I think that DNR would be able to provide information on the reasons for selecting certain areas for relay
Yeah,
and
I
the
would
potential.
like quantitative data on those areas.
And what kind of data?
The kind you gave for the other. Although you said you took X number of samples, but you didn't say what the size of samples were. Was it one pool? Was that?
Yeah, I think I wrote the area and the volume of the sediment removed. Should have been a cubic foot.
Yeah, it wasn't there, but I figured that's what you did.
I recall writing that, but okay, it's a draft.
Oh.
It can be finalized.
It's a draft for our NOI?
No, actually, the stock assessment is not.
No.
I was thinking about another one.
Are you going to do any kind of water quality monitoring to determine the effect of the grow-out areas on the water quality of those ponds?
I am not going to do that.
No? Okay, and then you answered who keeps people from harvesting them while still contaminated. And these are going to be open to commercial and recreational fishermen?
That's the plan, yes.
Okay. You are going to launch a boat from the Narragansett Street?
That's the plan.
You're going to, maybe by vehicle?
Yes.
Okay, that's a little bit of a concern, since
Right.
it's basically making a landing where landing doesn't exist. Is
That's
this
part of
where
the
the pond
research
will be accessed in the wintertime?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Is this where the pond will be accessed in the wintertime?
Yes, as necessary.
Okay, and the reason I ask that is, do I have that? Well, it goes under the what other resources are affected? What other organisms use these ponds in the wintertime?
To my knowledge, you have waterfowl that utilize the ponds in the
Yeah,
wintertime.
in fact, this is one of the hot spots
Right.
for red-headed ducks and for scarps. And so any activity should minimize any disturbance.
Sure. Wintertime activity would be quite minimal.
Okay.
And there would not be any floating structure.
Yeah, everything would be down.
Either down or removed and pitted. It's called pitting. When you can take oysters,
Oh, put them in a cellar.
put them in basically a cellar, in a
Root cellar.
controlled environment, because they go dormant and can actually survive for months at a time.
Okay, the interesting thing is, the reason I happen to know about these birds is this is not a place I've been birding, but a friend of mine there's some very avid birders in town, and he gave me a birding site, and he said not only is this a hot spot in this part of Massachusetts for red-headed ducks, but he said, I have a picture of it eating some of the muck that's on the bottom. So some of the nitrogen is actually being removed by ducks, winter waterfowl.
And I assume we're also bringing it in from
Well, a little
wherever
is
they
added
were
back in,
before.
but a net crop probably is going out. Okay, any other questions on the board?
We need a continuance.
Would Steve give up? He doesn't want to ask for?
No,
you
he's
are.
back there.
Oh,
He's
Ed.
right here.
Well, maybe not so questions, but comments, like I've been hearing a lot of comments tonight. All good. I think we all realize that whatever's done here has to be done as best as we can possibly do it. But I guess I've been sitting here wondering if we've gone a little bit beyond what we need to be discussing here. Because I don't see the role of this particular commission. Our role is not to necessarily, we're not responsible for the design of the study. We're not responsible for the validity of the study. That is to, make sure that we're measuring what we intend to measure. I see our role a little bit more limited. That's just to make sure that, ask the question, as we do all of our projects, if this project proceeds, can it proceed without doing any damage or harm to the wetlands resources? And I guess I've heard a lot of comment about the science, and those issues need to be addressed and really thought through so we have the best study that's possible. That's a little bit, I hesitate to use the word purview, but maybe it is the right word. That's a little bit beyond our purview of just protecting the resources for the project. The ultimate success or failure of the project is not our responsibility. Ultimately, I think we all share the same objective here. We all want to clean up the estuaries, and I guess we all do realize, as Mr. Bird said, he said oysters are not to be all in the underall, but I think we all have to realize from one of the earliest presentation slides there, talked about the sources of the inputs of nitrogen to Little Pond, as a matter of fact, septic systems, which can be the effluent from septic systems, which could be redirected into a sewer system. That still represents, I believe, less than 50% of the nitrogen input into the pond. So it's very, very important that we examine all of these alternative opportunities for removing nitrogen, and I think it's a very, very important project. So I do want to make sure, my personal view here in this meeting is that whatever we're doing here, I don't really think we want to do anything that would slow this project down or prevent it from happening this year. It's too important to the town. It's too important to the larger picture that we're all dealing with. So I say, let's continue to try and make sure we have the best science going. But I want to leave that to all of the scientists that are working on this thing. But limit the review of this particular board to the more refined and limited issues of can the project proceed without doing any kind of damage to the resources we protect. And I haven't heard anything myself that says otherwise.
But Ed, we often ask for monitoring plans to see how things have changed. And if I'm not comfortable with the monitoring plan, and neither is the consultant for the water quality board, that's a concern to me.
Well, you're not talking about a monitoring plan on the impact of resources. You're getting into monitoring that whole bigger issue of water quality, and we don't measure. We've never discussed water quality itself in the 9 years I've been on this commission, so it's really beyond what we get into. Not water quality in terms of measuring nitrogen content. We've never gotten into that.
You've looked at water quality and other aspects before. I can name them if you would like.
So I just want to make sure we don't
Steve,
get too involved in designing the project.
A continuance, Mr. Rafferty.
We'll
Is the
put a continuance
17th
on
too
board
soon
now.
for you to get the information that you need?
I don't think so. Let me just check. You were going to check on whether or not,
Yes, I will talk to Sia about the abutter notification.
about the abutter notification.
I need that slide. Sia, you sent me 9 attachments. I just counted them again about 3 times. I have 9 attachments. That one is not in there. So if you could send that with the memo that you said is attached to, that would be great, and I can forward that to the board. In addition, I need a copy of this PowerPoint presentation for the record. Okay? Excellent, thank you.
Both PowerPoints.
Yeah, yes, both PowerPoints, all of the PowerPoints.
And is it possible to put that online? On the
I think the
website?
demonstration project is online, Ed. You could. It's a project.
We don't have to put it online. They can-
No,
Is it
I'm just
online?
making that as a side request, yes.
You could put it online. We have a webpage, and
Yeah.
you can put it
On
online.
your website, yeah.
We can do that.
I need a hard copy for the file.
A hard copy for the file, yep.
Thank you. And you were going to talk with Dr. Gladfelter about possibly having a peer review of...
Yeah, I mean, we welcome the chance to get more
Yeah,
input.
John had actually asked me a few weeks back to get together, and are you around most days?
We're looking at the
You hope so?
17th or the 24th, or is that too soon? That
No,
gives
I
the
don't-
17th gives you 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks from today. Gives you a month.
April?
No, I'm sorry, April.
Yeah.
August 2013?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get right back at me. Okay. April 17th, sorry. about
April
that.
17th, yeah. And was there an issue with the DEP number?
You don't have one issued yet.
But
And
you
that
will
is
by the
outside
17th.
of my control, so.
They're slow, but they'll
They
get
will
you one by the
issue it.
17th.
I know that there have been some emails going back and forth that the analyst at DEP is asking for more information to complete her file.
Yep.
I've seen the emails to Sia, so hopefully she will have enough information to issue.
Back to her.
No, I think I might know what she's meant.
Okay. Yeah.
So the DEP number is outside of my control. We need
Okay.
to contact Southeast Region on that. So, I'm wide open after the 17th of April, so 24th, May 1st.
We'll go on, we'll take the 17th,
17th, okay?
yeah. If,
At the request of the applicant, I move that we continue this hearing until April 17th.
Second.
Okay, Mike, you have a question?
For Mark, as a civil engineer, are these things going to be visible? You got kayakers, there's no time.
very, very visible, they are floating on the surface.
Time to move one of these things out if a hurricane is coming in?
Yep, yeah, that's the whole sort of storm management plan. and-
Or you're 5 days out, right?
But I mean, the physical time to do it is...
Takes about 5 days to put them in, about 5 days to haul them back out. Yeah, I mean, if you really have to haul them out, you could go, but you don't have to load the bags up and put them all together, you just take them. Just take them out.
I just want to point out to John, you mentioned 2 strong men, but there could be a woman who is involved as a technician.
Are you talking about my mother?
Yes, she's looking for a summer job.
90 years old, she goes up the ladder and does all the work in the house. It's a tough person, tough person.
Okay, are there any other questions? Here, any questions from the audience? Okay.
Thank you.
John, you contact me. I know. There's a motion and a second on the table to continue till April 17th. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Thanks.
Thank you.
And we do appreciate all your work. All those of you on the water quality and all the people working with the water quality people.
We're back. Oh,
I already said it.
See, which one, which?
I'm gonna get you 2.
I got technical memo.
Because you're like,
Technical memo.
I mean, you're past the,
We're in cocktail range.
Technical memo.
I like that, yeah.
Okay, folks, we're not done yet. You're welcome. Lovely to see you. Lovely to see all of you, but time
We met.
We met. 17 Foster Road, East Falmouth. Request to amend the existing order of conditions, DEP number 253537, to establish a 10-foot construction access route, the placement and grading of approximately 400 cubic yards of compatible sand on the front side of the coastal dune, planting of beach grass, the replacement of any disturbed woody vegetation resource area buffer, resource area, and the associated clearing, grading, and landscaping. Jen?
Yes, Madam Chairman, this is an amended order of conditions. It's much,
yes,
it's very similar to the one, you saw in, earlier this evening. God, it seems like hours ago. I have a quick question before Tara begins, and you might answer this in your presentation. One of the concerns of this board in placing sand in these types of areas is its impact to Bourne's Pond. You stated at the 5 Foster Road hearing that it's your opinion that this sand will only move out to the end of those jetties. Is that the same in this case? Because one, like I said, this one's coming further down the beach. So we're moving into that sphere of concern with the sediment transport from the Minot Beach west, the Haddad parcel going east. That, you see what I'm saying?
I do.
You know, you and I have discussed the concerns about Bourne's Pond, and we're asking for, I think, 500 cubic yards, or if it's 400, it was 500 for the original project, and he wants 400 over the next 3 years. Correct? Yeah, 400 cubic yards.
Yeah, he wants 400, but we
Total.
would do it all at once.
Oh, yeah.
And we
Okay.
would restore it to its condition. Well, let me start. I'm Tara
All right.
Martin from the
Sorry.
Toll Group. I represent Robert Wormet, 17 Foster Road. I'm here to request an amendment to the existing order of conditions that was issued in 2009 for the dune restoration project. It's very similar in scope to the original project here. To answer your question, Jen, we did 2 S-Beach transects. One was at the McGann property and one was at the Woodmet property, to show how this sand is actually moving, if it actually indeed does hit the dune during these big storm events. In both of those transects showed the same data, that the sand is being dispersed in the intertidal area in small spurts during these big storms, but not making it out past the end of the groins. Again, there are no eel beds here. Nothing has been mapped by DEP. This project is about 150 feet to the east of the McGann project. I wish that I had presented this with McGann. I wouldn't have to sit through that 2 hours of oyster project. The access that we're proposing to use is through the McGann property, just like we did the last time. And come down the beach, restore the dune on the front side, and go out. If McGann decided not to do his project, which he will not do because he's patiently waiting to have this work done, the other thing I was going to propose, we do have a second access on here.
I saw that.
The second access is through, and it's actually a little bit different because we wouldn't be cutting through all the vegetation right here. What we've actually used on a couple of projects in Mashpee is this conveyor system, and the conveyor itself actually extends about 90 feet. So the area up through here is it's all lawn and just landscaping. So we put steel plates down up here where the sand would actually be dumped, then it's scooped onto the conveyor. There's a couple of trees right here, so the access is narrow. We probably would be limited to this area right here. The boom actually extends out, it just conveys the sand out.
I've seen that system before.
It's about 90 feet. So we'd be getting, I don't have,
I have it. If you're going from the back corner of the house, the seaward edge of that corner of the house, you're almost at the top of the dune.
Right, so we'd be
So you
getting
don't quite make it yet. A little, you're close.
we'd be in the area of the beach grass.
Yeah.
So any disturbance would be to the area of the beach grass. We wouldn't be disturbing any of the woody plants further back on the property. So we would like the option to just use the access with McGann because it's obviously very simple. We use the same access when we come down the beach. But if the 2 projects were going to be done separately, if Mr. McGann chose not to do this project, we would like the option to come in here like I said, this is just lawn, so he would have to restore, you know, his lawn in the backside here. The conveyor would actually sit right here. It's like a hopper, you drop it in and then it conveys it out, and then it would come through here. I've been out here with the contractor, actually looked at this, and logistically it works out. The sand would be dumped down here in the area where the beach grass is, then it would, front end loader would move it out onto the beach, and we're planning on replanting all the beach grass anyways. So that
With
would-
your, I like your option 1 access, but the only hiccup I see in that is, do you have written permission from the Collarans to access?
No, but I will get that. Don actually gave me permission before, but I will consult with him before, and I will give you written permission
I
from
will need
him.
written permission prior to you going out there,
Yep.
that if you're gonna cross his property, he has no
No, I do,
concerns
yep.
with that. Okay.
I do understand that. If he did have a problem with that, that's why the second access would also be, you know, what we request. And again, anything that we disturb would be restored completely upon
And,
construction.
I'm gonna ask this before Michelle does, because she asked the last time, Foster, are you planting beach grass down the face of that dune or just on the top?
Well, we proposed here to put it along the top. We certainly can put it on the front side. That's, if you're more than willing to plant it on the front side, the beach grass is pretty cheap to actually put in.
Be a lot more stable.
Yeah, so I can change your drawing right now, so we don't have to change the plan. I can just draw the beach grass in there. But I will put the beach grass on the front side of the dune, if the commission would like to see that. And there will be a small pathway through the newly constructed dune down onto the beach, which will be about 4 feet wide, which is what we had the last time. So this is access from the property out to the beach.
And Madam Chairman, you did ask me about the monitoring plans. They were submitted for this property too.
Okay.
I double checked.
Yep.
We have kept up, we've done the monitoring and done surveys and submitted the reports every year. It would continue to do so.
Okay. Questions? Courtney?
On the, even though we've closed the other one, I assume that we'd make it similar condition about planting dune grass on McGann.
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't closed McGann yet, Courtney. That was continued because they have to change the plan. That was continued to next week.
But that
But
would
it
be a
will be a
similar
very,
condition.
very same condition, yes.
We
No
did
other
agree to that.
questions?
Okay.
No questions?
Michelle?
There's a path that comes down from the house. I would imagine that you wouldn't plant grass. I mean, you wouldn't block the path. The path would be to go down
No,
it.
we're gonna maintain a 4-foot path, which, we put this path in the last time, and then we would extend it through the new section of the dune out onto the beach.
And the 3-to-1 slope will be fine for such a path.
Yeah, it was fine the first time around, so, you know, the path kind of gets worn down over time.
That's all questions I have.
Mike?
Reflecting on the other comments, is that we still have, looking at the plan, it looks right, but they still have access to between high and low water. So there's no impact with that.
No, this has no impact on that. And
That's what it looks like, that's fine.
even at the McGann property, it's not, anything that's below mean high water is probably on town property, except for those piles on the beach. And I did at one point request to remove those, but the commission was kind of on the fence the last time I came in here for that. I'm not sure if any of these, you know, homeowners still would like to remove the piles from the beach. The one at Wilmette is still, it's almost a full bulkhead out in the water. It's pretty consistent all the way across the property. So I don't think he has plans to touch that. And on the back side of it, it's covered with rocks. I mean, it's like almost like a revetment on the back side of, it's been the same, I'm guessing, for 50 years. I'm not sure why this one didn't erode away when the rest of them did. I'm assuming because there's so many rocks on the back side. But yeah, this is not impeding access at all.
It seems like a legitimate concern.
Tommy?
No questions, just that this should have the same provision for the environmentally friendly lubricants and machines.
Oh, yeah, it'll be the same. That's what that means. Priscilla dropped these off. I have them in the file. They're from the 40s or 50s. Look at that thing.
I know.
There used to be
It's
a
crazy.
big,
That's the
there used to be a
old,
big
Boardwalk.
hotel down there.
yeah, it
and
used
a
to be the
boardwalk.
whole boardwalk along that shoreline, because we never could figure out what the heck those words,
Right.
how deep they go down, and the town, we went in and, they filed them, we pulled a couple of pilings out from down Minot. They're big, like real.
It was big, it was a big boardwalk.
Big. The pilings go down real far.
Like
So in
10,
order to
15,
remove that structure,
20?
it's gonna be a substantial amount of work. Can be done, but it's gonna be a lot of work.
Yeah, he hasn't really talked about
Okay.
removing that.
I thought you and I had briefly rediscussed it back when we went on site.
For Collarin.
Yeah.
But I think he thinks it kind of holds the beach in because.
That's
Yes,
the
yes.
perception of a lot of
And that's, when that came up in the past, I had that concern, I would still have that concern, just on this particular lot. Some of the others where there's some isolated pilings, there are
Right.
safety issues.
Right,
and-
right.
Okay. But no, we'll put that same condition in, Tommy, about the eco-friendly transmission or machine-type fluids.
I'm not sure there's no eelgrass offshore. I'm not that concerned about it here, but you made this sort of blanket statement, but there was eelgrass when we did the
Off
Minot
and on,
project.
When we did the water
It is
project,
also-
there
there
was
is
a
eelgrass
survey, yeah,
off
somewhere off there.
But I mean, you know,
Spotty.
some sand, that's how eelgrass beds grow. And it's like marshes, more sediment and they keep growing up.
Right, because
So
it needs to
I'm
keep
not-
up with sea
I'm not
level
saying
rise,
it's
so.
you know, but you kind of made the statement that there isn't any off there.
Not any off of this property. But I do understand there is some eelgrass off of Minot. But
Yeah.
it's not directly impacted by this I think with
Well,
eelgrass, any project has to
potentially-
be 50 feet from any eelgrass bed, correct?
No, I mean, potentially, one of the things we look at is if the sand gets swished off in a storm, what kind of impact is it gonna have? Is it gonna go into a channel? Is it gonna bury a seagrass bed?
Right, no, I understand.
Okay. Do we have everything? Let's close it. Do we have a number?
You don't need one, it's
It's
an
an
amendment.
amendment.
Oh, let's close it.
Motion to close and take it under advisement.
Any further questions? All in favor of the motion on the table, which is to close it and take it under advisement, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
I didn't say anything.
Unanimous.
Don't say anything.
Unanimous, so moved.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any orders tonight?
We'll do next week.
Okay,
Motion to adjourn.
Have a good night.
yay! All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'd like to go for another 10 minutes just to drag it out.
Oh, Tommy